What's the strangest incident that's happened on an airline flight? Last year I was traveling to Israel to see my daughter who was expecting my third grandchild. I was traveling alone on this occasion on El Al, and I had booked my seat on the aisle as is usual with me as I am slightly claustrophobic and do not enjoy being hemmed in on a plane. When I eventually got to my seat there was a religious, Hasidic, gentleman sitting in the middle of the set of 3 seats in that row, and as I went to sit down he gestured ungentlemanly. I thought not to sit there as he, as a religious Jew, could not sit next to a woman. You can imagine I felt uncomfortable. I called the stewardess and calmly explained I wanted an aisle seat near the front of the plane because that is what I booked. She wanted to seat me in the middle row of 5 further back where I knew all the screaming children were usually sat. I will usually try to help anyone out, but this was a bridge too far. So I politely suggested that if this gentleman did not want to sit near me, in all logic he should be the one to move and not I. I was feeling by this time uncomfortable with the situation. Uncomfortable that he was comfortably seated whilst I was being shunted around standing in the aisle and all the passengers shoving me from side to side. But I was proud of myself. It was a 5-hour flight and I did not want to get in my irritable mode for the duration. I waited patiently and then the flight attendant came up with a solution and she found a gentleman who was prepared to swap with the religious man. So at last that was accomplished and we were all seated. Once airborne, the gentleman who had swapped places wanted to know what was going on, and I explained the situation, that it was forbidden for these religious people to sit next to women. Their wives of course excluded. What's the fastest you've wiped a smirk off of someone's face? I have one of those neighbors that are always causing issues. Her husband is actually pretty cool, so out of respect I usually bite my tongue. I had a bad day, you know, the kind you can't wait for it to be over. There was nothing specific, just a lot of little things. I pull in and she is standing at the end of my driveway. She starts complaining about trees. I'm going, just keep your mouth shut, don't say anything. She finishes then says, well, I didn't respond, so then she says, are you just going to sit there or are you going to answer me? I put a big smile on my face and said one word, C-word. The smirk was gone. She stormed off and called the police. The cops came and I explained what happened. They warned her not to trespass again or the next time she would be arrested. They should have issued a ticket or arrested her for abuse of 911. Saying a word isn't against the law. If she wasn't acting like one I wouldn't have said it. I was assaulted by my friend's boyfriend and she watched. I, 28F, was invited over to my friend and her boyfriend's place the other night. She came and picked me up because I had been drinking a little. When we got there she asked if I wanted some pot and I declined. I poured myself a drink and we were talking in the kitchen when her boyfriend came behind me and started feeling me up. I was shocked and I said, oh, I'm on my period, hoping he would leave me alone. It was so shocking that I didn't say anything about it and neither did she. I went to the bathroom and when I came back they were starting to cook. I asked if I could help and they said not to worry and to sit down and drink. I looked at my drink after I drank it and it tasted kinda weird and looked like there was oil in it. I asked if they put something in my drink and the boyfriend said that it was liquid marijuana. I blew it off because I don't mind pot, but I thought it was weird that they were wanting me to do it so badly. They usually don't share like that. If I use pot, I usually bring my own edibles. Well, I started feeling really weird and sleepy and he started touching me again. He started to become more and more aggressive and started biting me. I looked over at her and she was taking pictures. He pushed me to my knees and you can guess the rest. I texted my husband to come get me and left pretty quickly. It was a weird experience. I don't remember the car ride and I woke up this morning in bed somehow. I haven't told my husband and I'm really not sure I want to. I was raped for years as a child and I've also been raped as a young adult. I just feel completely worthless and like I deserve it at this point. ETA, there are a few questions about why I didn't leave after the first time he grabbed me. After he did that I texted my husband to come get me and tried to call while I was in the bathroom. He didn't answer and didn't read my text for about a half hour, and he left to come get me, but my house is about 25 minutes away.
My teacher is obsessed with my crush. So she punished me because he likes me too. I think my 40-year-old teacher is in love with my 18-year-old friends. Ever since I've known this teacher, I've always had a bad feeling about her. Whenever she came up in a conversation, my guy friends would start talking about how beautiful, kind, and sweet she was. To say I had high expectations for her was an understatement. They always talked her up like she was Lady Godiva, but I thought it was really weird that all the boys would be talking about her like that because it was just boys, never girls. In fact, the girls didn't like her one bit. They would tell me it was really weird how she acted around these guys because she always gave them her undivided attention, but talked really rudely to the girls. I always just took their word for it because I never had an encounter with her. But when I did meet her, I knew the girls were right. I was with my guy friend when I met her, one who always told me she was so gorgeous and well, my first actual impression of her was not a good one. She immediately snapped at me, asking why I was with my friend. She sounded jealous, honestly, and I haven't liked her since. It was really just weird of her, but she tried to play it off by saying I was a distraction to my friend since he was supposed to be doing work. When my friend told her that I was just there to be there, she calmed down. Then, during the summer, I found out she actually texts with my friends. I thought it was really weird that she had their phone numbers and texted them during summer. I've had my teacher's number before, but we only communicated for school purposes. I never actually texted them during summer. I thought that was really inappropriate, but it got worse when I realized she only had the boys' numbers. She would text them as if they were friends, and it disturbed me a lot. It got worse though, because she would visit my friends' dorms, again, only the guys. They would always make plans to hang out, and it was just weird because what does an adult have to talk about with an 18-year-old guy? I think that if she was a guy texting girls, people would see there's an issue here. But because she was so loved by the guys, they thought nothing of it. If anything, some guys were jealous that they didn't get that special treatment from her since they never had her as a teacher. This meant that guys were aware of her predatory behavior but dismissed it because she was hot. I talked to my friend about her one day and she agreed heavily that her behavior with these guys was not normal. She even had an experience similar to mine, with her yelling at her for hanging out with a guy. It's like she wants the boys all for herself, and it gives me the creeps. I don't want to be associated with her, but I saw that she's going to be my teacher for the upcoming school year and I'm dreading it. I can already see her picking on me because I talked to one of her little minions. Update: she is the worst. My friend and I were talking during class about what we did over the summer, and I mentioned how I went to a pool party that my friend hosted and all our other friends were there. When I said a specific guy's name, my teacher immediately interrupted our conversation to say she went hiking with him alone, emphasis on alone. By her tone of voice, it sounded like she was trying to one-up me, as if her experience with my friend was so much better than mine. Me and my friend just looked at each other with the same expression on our faces, and we were both thinking the same thing: she's a child lover. I told her that was cool and went back to my conversation. Before class ended, my friend asked what I was doing after school. I told her since the weather was nice, me and that specific guy were going to get ice cream together and just hang out. I said I was really excited since I hadn't seen him in a while. That's when my teacher told me that the two of them had gotten ice cream together before, so I shouldn't get my hopes up if I was expecting something romantic to happen. The red flags had never been redder. I was pretty much sick of her at this point since I had to hear all about her my previous school year, summer, and now she was going to be my teacher. So I lashed out. I asked her why she was hanging out with teenage boys so much. She got really defensive quickly and said they're not teenagers because they're already 18. I told her that doesn't matter since it was still weird. I really didn't care how this would affect our teacher-student dynamic because I have been waiting for the opportunity to call her out. But because she's in a higher position of power than me, she told me I had detention for a whole week and didn't continue arguing with me. Obviously I was not going to attend those detentions because they were unjustified, and if she ratted on me to the principal for not going, I was definitely going to mention her weird relationships with her male students. I knew she was stupid, but even she couldn't be that stupid to risk her career for detention. The next day, she asked why I wasn't in detention, and I straight up told her I wasn't going to go because I had no reason to be there. Honestly, I think she just wanted me to miss my hangout with my friend, which didn't happen. I even bragged to her about it and she got so angry. She was talking pretty low before, but once I mentioned that he held my hand, she raised her voice at me and said I now had 2 weeks of detention. I told her I wouldn't be able to make any of those because I have plans with the same guy, and he said he missed me, so I couldn't let him down. She bumped my detention up to 3 weeks. I refused to let my niece live with my substance-obsessed sister. Am I the jerk for wanting to sue for custody? My sister Lily had my niece Emma when she was 26. She was at the time living with my parents along with her then boyfriend, and they had both just gotten out of rehab for H addiction. Both her and her boyfriend were not able to stay clean for long, and she was using them throughout her pregnancy. When Emma was almost 2 months old, she came to me begging me to take Emma for 2 months while she checked into rehab again to get clean. I was 22 years old living in an efficient apartment while putting myself through law school, but my parents insisted they couldn't care for an infant and had suggested foster care to my sister, so I took my niece in. When my sister got out of her rehab, she got back together with her boyfriend who was still taking drugs, and thus began 5 years of a vicious cycle where one of them would get clean only to be dragged back under by the other. I took legal guardianship of Emma, although it was still supposed to be temporary. Every time Lily would bring up taking her back, I said I would agree on the condition that they both passed a substance test. That never happened. When Emma was almost 6 years old, my sister came to me saying she was once again pregnant. This was the turning point for her, and she gave birth to my nephew having been clean for almost 8 months. Obviously it was very hard for both me and Emma, going from her living with me, to moving back in with her parents. We went to court and worked out a custody arrangement where I still have Emma every weekend, but she spends the week with her mom and dad. We attended family therapy all together for the first year, and once we settled on a routine we stopped. Here comes the issue. My sister is once again pregnant, and she and her former boyfriend, now husband, say that they don't want to allow Emma to come with me on weekends because apparently she comes home to them acting like a brat. I absolutely understand the issue. My sister is a stay-at-home mom. She does not work, so she has plenty of time with Emma, but she chooses not to. I explained to my sister that when Emma is with me she is the center of attention, and going from that to having to fight her brother for her mom's limited attention between bouts of morning sickness has to be hard. I offered to take my nephew weekends as well to give my sister some rest, or to possibly resume family therapy so Emma could work through these changes. My sister simply told me that Emma would be taking a break from spending time with me. I let her have 2 weekends with Emma, and then when she continued to stonewall me, I threatened to take her to court. We have a custody agreement in place and I am still one of Emma's legal guardians. She said I'm throwing the past in her face, and won't let her be a real mother to Emma. I'm conflicted. I raised Emma for almost 6 years and I treasure every moment I spend with her, but am I getting in the way? Emma calls me every evening and asks what we are doing over the weekend and why I don't have time for her, so I think additionally my sister is spinning it as me not wanting her to come. I just want what's best for Emma, so am I the jerk? My mother-in-law wants to prove that my children are not my husband, so she tested them without our consent, so I want her to prove her worth to be invited to our wedding. My husband's family can be extremely judgmental and have said they didn't like me or my character because I grew up in a place opposite to where they're from. Every time I met with his family, some drama would unfold. For example, his mom accused me of touching his brother's leg inappropriately at his grandfather's funeral. I slapped his knee because he told me a joke I thought was funny. I chalked it up to the fact she just lost her dad. She didn't like me, so she needed someone to take some type of anger out on. I put up with a lot more than that for my husband since I never wanted to be the type of person to ask him to choose. 5 months ago, I had our second child. When I found out I was pregnant, my husband and I were going through a rough patch. We almost divorced because of a lot of things, his mother being one of them. We decided to work on our marriage, and we've been amazing ever since. The best we've ever been. During my pregnancy, his mother and I got close. I'd like to say I'm forgiving and try to see the best in everyone. It also made my husband happy. She even came down to stay with us when I had the baby. Fast forward a month, and she called my husband and said she and his dad would love to come and visit since his dad had yet to meet the baby. I thought the visit went well, but while my husband had gone outside to get my toddler's car seat from their rental car, my father-in-law told my husband he needed to swab his mouth to ensure the baby was his. My husband, of course, got angry and asked my father-in-law why they came to visit. My mother-in-law ran outside because she heard them fighting and told my husband it was nothing like that everyone in the family was swabbing their mouths because they were doing a 23andMe. She said my sister-in-law and brother-in-law had done it and wanted him to do it, too. He declined to do one, and we left it. A month after the visit, my mother-in-law called my husband and said she needed to speak with him privately. He went outside for an hour to speak with his mother and returned inside visibly upset. He pulled me to my room privately and informed me that my mother-in-law and father-in-law had swabbed both my newborn's mouth and my toddler's mouth when they had visited. They said that my toddler came back 99.99% related to them, but my newborn only came back 11% related to them. So they felt the need to tell my husband so he could get my newborn DNA tested. I was confused and angry. When my husband and I separated, I had not slept with anyone else since our relationship was so rocky. I didn't want to do anything more to jeopardize losing him, so I didn't understand why she felt the need to take a DNA test into her own hands, especially since it wasn't a concern of my husband's. Ever since my husband was told of the DNA test, he and his mother would not stop fighting for several reasons. I no longer trusted her with my children, and I no longer wanted her around, and she couldn't understand that. We decided to get a DNA test on our newborn so we could shove the results in her face and we could move on with our lives. Of course, the test returned 99%, and my husband and I thought we could just pretend it didn't happen, but the damage was done. That brings us to today. We set boundaries with mother-in-law and father-in-law. They can no longer video chat with the children every day like before. Our daughter is not allowed to go over meals alone, and we no longer update them about things going on in our lives. We've kept them at a distance, and it's working for us. Recently, my husband and I started marriage classes to redo our wedding with our families. My family knows the whole situation with mother-in-law, and I'm also not her biggest fan, so I told my husband I did not feel comfortable inviting them to our wedding. My husband was upset but understood. We have sent out our save the dates to everyone in his family except mother-in-law and father-in-law. There has been nothing but drama since. She has not apologized. She called me to talk out the situation and explain that I understood her doubt. I also explained to her that it made no sense to me why she couldn't just ask me for the test since she and I were in such a good spot. I would have done it willingly. Her apology went along the lines of I'm not going to apologize because I believe what I did was right to protect mine. When I informed her we were taking some space, she responded, I don't understand because I've disrespected you so much in the past. Why is it now different? I've spoken with my husband about the situation, and he said he is fine.
Why are mistresses so brazen? I recently discovered that my ex-boyfriend of 8 years had cheated on me. It all came to light when a security guard, who was his affair partner, posted pictures on TikTok 3 months ago. These pictures showed them together, holding hands and being intimate on the beach and during their drinking sessions. The caption referred to my ex as a friend, despite them being involved romantically. When I confronted her about the affair, she showed no fear of facing consequences at their workplace, claiming that all their colleagues knew about their relationship. She even suggested that we meet to talk things over, mentioning that my ex had approached her first and she was unwittingly dragged into it. My friends, family, and even my ex's own family called her out for her actions. Her response? She changed her profile picture on social media to show her living with my ex and proudly displayed a hickey on her cleavage. She began sharing passive-aggressive posts targeting me on social media. She also made comments about how amazing my ex's intimate skills were and announced their plans to get married, despite knowing that my ex's family did not approve of her. Even my ex's mom threatened to physically confront her if she ever saw her. But this woman showed no respect for my ex's family. To make matters worse, her own mother defended her cheating behavior by messaging me and telling me to watch my language since they never intentionally hurt anyone. It's astonishing. Their audacity to disrespect me and everyone else is beyond words. It's sickening to think that people like her exist in this world. She proudly embraces her start as a side chick and now parades her relationship with my ex as official. She even goes as far as tagging me on social media, claiming that I am just an ex and making fun of my mental health condition. Meanwhile, she stalks me daily. I eagerly anticipate the universe's response to their actions and how it will ultimately bring justice after what they put me through. Edit, I've already blocked them on all social media platforms. Am I the a-hole for sending our son away after he made fun of his sister's insecurities to everyone? My husband and I have a 14-year-old daughter and a 16-year-old son. When our daughter was 8, she developed a very rare mouth infection that just absolutely devastated her teeth and gums. She ended up losing all her teeth in both sets, and had to have some corrective work done just so she could have regular dentures. Obviously this was very traumatic for her, and she's still in therapy to help cope to this day. Our daughter is understandably very self-conscious about this. None of her friends knew about them. In fact, nobody besides her doctor and dentist know outside the family. She doesn't want people to know. She's very worried about people finding out, and won't even take her teeth out in front of the rest of us. She's worried someone will see. Her and her brother had a good relationship until he did what he did last week. He somehow recorded her taking out her teeth without her noticing, and then showed all her friends when they were over. He also sent the video to people in school and it spread. Not only have they all turned on her, but half the school is teasing her nonstop. She even had to change her phone number because dozens of kids were texting her the most vile things imaginable. I have never been more ashamed of one of my children until that moment. I don't know where we went wrong raising him, but apparently he thought it would be funny. After I kicked out her friends who were mocking her and helped her through a panic attack, I called my father to pick him up, and told him to pack a bag and get out. He's been staying with my parents 2 towns over. They didn't know what happened until 2 days ago. That came up because driving him to school was becoming a hassle, and they wanted to know what was up. When I explained, they were disgusted, but still wanted to know when they could bring him home. I asked them if they'd take care of registering him for school in their town, and they agreed but were shocked. My husband and I talked, and we just cannot have him here. His sister hates him. We're so ashamed we can't even think of calling him. It sounds awful, but I don't think our relationship can recover from this, and maybe this is what he needs. I'm suing my daughter for all of the money she made me waste on her for child support. My daughter, Aria, abandoned us, her stepmother, younger half-sister and me, when she was 15 to go live with my enabling ex-wife, Sandra, and her husband. Until then, we had 50-50 custody, but Sandra has always been less strict than me. She's always let Aria do what she wants and has never had any home rules. She also buys Aria everything she wants so she will want to live with her. Sandra lives in the same town where Aria's high school was, while I live 25 minutes away. So, one of my rules was that if she went to meet up with a friend there, meaning I had to drive her, the next time they met, it would be her friend's turn to come. If the friend's parents didn't want to drive the kid here, then Aria wasn't allowed to meet them again while she was with me. Everything was fine that way for years. The major fallout happened in her last year of high school. She was 15. She went on a trip to another country with her school and didn't bother to send more than a couple of texts when she was away for 5 days. So I decided to ground her because she had to learn to respect and show some love for her family. She insisted she had sent messages to her mother, but we had barely heard from her. She's never had a lot of friends, but she had been invited to some popular girl's birthday party. This was my punishment, not going to that party after forgetting about her family. She got upset and started calling her mother to come pick her up, but it was illegal to get her if it was my week. Plus, she wanted to go to her mother's because she would lift my punishment and let her go to the party. Her mother came by the end of the week and I told Aria that she didn't have to come back if she didn't want to. I waited, but I heard nothing from her again. Her sister kept asking me why she didn't come back, and I didn't know how to explain to her that she didn't love us and that she preferred staying with her mother, her parties and her free of rules life. Over the years we've communicated through lawyers, because Sandra has zero intentions on helping me get my daughter back. She finally has her to herself. They've been demanding that I pay for child support, even now that she's 21 years old. I have to pay for that and for half of her college expenses, by law. When Aria turned 18, an adult, I started adding up everything I had to pay in an Excel that I sent to Sandra when I updated so she knows what damage she is doing to our daughter. I expect Aria to pay her debt, but I gave Sandra the option to pay for her, to which she refused. We are now at 18K. Aria has been trying to get in touch again. I told her that we can't fix the emotional part unless we fix the money part first. She needs to prove to me that she doesn't only care about the money. Sandra says I'm a jerk, but I think she is, since she has done nothing but try to take my daughter away and she finally has what she wants. So, am I the a-hole?
My horrible mother-in-law brought gluten food knowing that I am allergic to gluten 6 days after I gave birth. Now, she's furious because I gave them all away. I had my first baby 6 days ago. My birth went well, but I'm still recovering, in quite a bit of pain, and have been very sensitive emotionally since giving birth. My husband and I told our families that we'd likely have no visitors for the first 1 to 2 weeks, just to set expectations. But privately the two of us decided that we would play it by ear and see how we felt. Our second day home with our baby was really rough on me, and all I wanted was my mom to comfort and help me, so my husband and I decided to call my mom and have her come over. She was such a major help, both emotionally and with the baby, so we had her come by every other day since. She went above and beyond to help us. Also, My bestie and her husband live down the street and have been dropping off meals and walking our dog for us, but I don't consider that visiting is much of a favor. Mother-in-law found out about my mom's visits and was very upset, so we decided to have her over for a brief visit. On day 6 postpartum, she said they'd bring food and arrived around dinner time. I have celiac disease, so I cannot eat gluten. Mother-in-law brought homemade lasagna, pasta salad, muffins, and 2 types of cookies, all full gluten, and explained to me that she was sorry but she had limited notice and only had time to make my husband's favorites. I immediately started crying and my husband thanked his mom but took me to the other room and told me he'd take care of it and ordered us delivery on the spot. I composed myself, introduced mother-in-law and father-in-law to the baby, and then mother-in-law made another comment about how she wished she could have brought food for me but it was just so time-consuming and burdensome to make things gluten-free. I snapped and told her she was rude and told her I was angry. Toward the end of the visit, my best friend's husband knocked on the door to come walk our dog and to my surprise brought us a homemade gluten-free tiramisu. I started crying and thanked him profusely, and he told us it was no problem and surprisingly easy to make. Mother-in-law was pissed. She realized that they'd been coming by and started complaining about how wrong this all was because she had to wait 6 days to see the baby and was faced with anger. My husband took my baby from her and father-in-law snapped at her to drop it. They stayed and chatted for a short while, and when Bestie's husband came back to drop our dog off, I sent him home with one of the batches of cookies mother-in-law brought, which upset mother-in-law. Mother-in-law has been texting and calling and trying to rally people against me since. My husband has my back and even went the next day to drop off almost all the rest of the gluten food to our friends, and he told me to block mother-in-law's number if she kept harassing me.
My intimacy addiction is ruining my life. So it's only been about a month since I made my last post, but something scary happened 2 weeks ago and I don't know whether to think this is a bad thing yet. Backstory for those who don't want to read my last post, but I have an intimacy addiction. I've been working at recovery for about 7 months. So far 4 months without a hookup and 2 months without watching intimate videos. I only started doing this because I feel in love with a girl but knew I'd never be able to have a relationship with her if I stayed like this. Though as advised in my last post I should change my goal and I have. Though I am still good friends with the girl. Anyway, I had 2 best friends. The friend in question who I am extremely upset at and has been my friend since I was 13. Let's call this friend John. John has been one of my most trusted friends and recently I have been in a rut and thought maybe having some support from a friend would help. So I told John everything. John, from what I saw, took it well and offered his ear whenever I would need it. I also told him I've slept with other 100 people. Which was the only thing I could visibly see that off-put him. I told him I just wanted my life back on track so I could be normal and get to the true place I wanted in my field of work. This is where the problem happens. A few days later I go and hang out with him, my roommate and the rest of the group. This group includes the girl who I will call Katie. Katie has been giving me weird looks the whole time I was there and is avoiding talking to me. I go to my roommate and ask if Katie is okay and he just gives me this look of sadness. He brings me into a room away from everyone and tells me that John told everyone including Katie about my intimacy addiction and how I've slept with over 100 people. How I am disgusting and even almost got caught masturbating at my job. He also failed to tell them I was getting intensive help for my issues, but what he did tell them was that I had a major crush on Katie and have been self-pleasuring to her Instagram photos. Which I certainly did not. I'd never violate her like that. He also told them not to tell me because we shouldn't shame him for his mental illness. I get upset and tell my roommate that yes, I do have an intimacy addiction and that yes, I did almost get caught trying to self-pleasure at my job, but I never self-pleasured to any photos of Katie and I'm getting intensive help with my issues. I also told him I've been taking Prozac, which has to be honest lowered my libido by a lot in the last coming weeks. I've been getting help for 7 months. He tells me that he believes me, and I thought wow, I thought he'd think I was lying. He dropped another bomb on me saying that John has a huge crush on Katie and probably did this to hurt my reputation with her. That he has lived with me long enough to know I wasn't that bad and how he didn't trust John after the way he exposed my stuff like that to the whole group. He asked if he'd help me tell her what happened. He asked John if he could go out and get some beer for us and John asked me if I'd like to go. Holding back all my hatred I told him in a calm voice no thanks. He leaves and I walk into roommate's room. My roommate asks Katie to go speak to him for a moment. She says sure and opens the door to my roommate's room to see me. She gives me an extremely disgusted face which to be honest really hurt me. My roommate tells her that John lied to her about what I did and likes her and that's why he tried to ruin my reputation. She is obviously shocked about this. Then after some more explanation and reasoning from my roommate, apologizes for assuming I was a creep with an intimacy addiction. To which I had to prematurely explain to her that yes I did. I asked the roommate to leave the room for a bit. He does so and closes the door. Katie looks at me and apologizes again for assuming I would do that to her. I told her there was no need and people are sick like that. It's not her fault for protecting herself. I then explained that I do have an intimacy addiction and have been working on progressing to my recovery for 7 months. That I did have intimacy with over 100 people and that I did have a crush on her. I didn't tell her that she was my goal. I didn't want to put any more weight on her that I already have. I told her I wanted to ask her out and realized it would never work because of my issues and how it had got me thinking on how I can't live a normal life in general. How I felt like I'd lose the best job I've ever had if this kept up. She completely understood and thanked me for being honest. She told me she actually did have a crush on me, but once John lied to her she got creeped out. I asked her if she was being truthful about liking me. She told me she was being serious. She told me it wouldn't be right to date right now because of what's going on with me and I agreed. Though she said if I do hit a good recovery point that she would love to go out on a date. I agreed. I don't know if she'll actually wait for me to recover, but it is a nice thought. I will not be rushing my recovery though, I want to be cured sustainably. So we come out, John isn't back yet but my roommate has explained to our group of friends of John's lie. Some of them still gave me grossed out faces when finding out about my issue but the others were very supportive. When John walked in all hell broke loose. Katie was screaming at him about how he could betray his friend in need like that. How he was disgusting and selfish and she would never want to be with someone like him. My roommate laid into him too and told him he wasn't welcome in his apartment anymore. My other friends who were there also cast him off. It feels like my support group has grown from 1 to 7. Though losing a lifelong friend is definitely hurting me. My other best friend who was friends with both me and John has also cut John off. Apparently John has done something similar to this to him. Just got gaslighted into thinking it was justified. I also have a plant now, it's a bonsai tree. It's thriving and so am I. I hung out with Katie recently, that was nice. It's nice to be able to be around people. Since this happened about 2 weeks ago things are still a bit awkward. John has consistently been leaving me nasty messages but oh well. I'm still extremely worried though about the future especially because my business was just thrown out there by someone who was supposed to be my best friend. Hopefully everything goes well. I just looked at his messages out of curiosity. So I'm bisexual and he knows that. He's just calling me the F slur and calling me a thief. How I'll cheat on her once we start dating. How I should just stick to men and stop being greedy because what woman would love me? I kind of didn't want to block him in hopes of him apologizing and maybe to talk it out. Nope. I blocked him on everything and just sent his messages to the group chat I have with my roommate and Katie. They are currently clowning him.
My 22F boyfriend, 22M, physically blocked me from leaving the bathroom, and I don't think he understands how triggering it was. This morning my partner and I got into an argument and I stormed off. I was really upset, so I went into the bathroom and locked the door so he couldn't follow me. My boyfriend said he needed to use the bathroom, so I begrudgingly unlocked it to let him in and then he started talking again about the argument and continuing to share his perspective. I obviously felt tricked, as I would not have let him in if I knew he was going to continue the conversation. I then tried to leave as I didn't want to have the conversation in that moment because I was too upset. He blocked the doorway with his body and would not let me leave the bathroom. I immediately started to panic. I was abused in the bathroom by my father on multiple occasions as a child and being stuck in the bathroom not able to leave is very triggering for me. This happened once before several years ago, where my boyfriend tried to get me to stay in the bathroom by grabbing my arm. He apologized when I explained how triggering it was for me. Anyway, I started to panic and was yelling at him to let me out. He ignored my requests and was asking me to calm down / take deep breaths. I was forcefully trying to move him so I could leave but he wouldn't budge. In my yelling panic, I told him I was feeling very triggered and wanted to leave, but he still wouldn't let me. He said he was going to record my behavior so I could watch it back. I told him if he didn't let me leave the bathroom I was going to call the police. He smirked / rolled his eyes when I said this. It was admittedly very dramatic as he truly never makes me feel unsafe and is generally respectful of my boundaries, but I felt like I was about to pass out and was very overwhelmed. After about 5 minutes and my constant panic and yelling to let me out, he let me out. Can I please get a reality check here? I know I was in the wrong for storming off / yelling, but it also makes me feel a bit sick that he couldn't find it in him to let me out when I said I was triggered / felt unsafe or try to give me a hug / comfort me when I was very clearly struggling.
Abuse your workers? I'll beat your SS, then get you fired. I work for a large global IT company. In my team, we are part of a larger extended team, and an even larger still divisional team. The manager of this division is called Raj. He's based in the States, and is what many would call the poster boy definition of a corporate suck-up. According to him, he is in constant video chats with the CEO, and has a lot of face-to-face interaction with him. He also appears on much of our division's promotional emails and photographic material, so he's a company-wide recognized person. As for me, I am a trench-working tech guy from Scotland. My direct manager is always happy with my performance, and I am somewhat known in our extended team, but not so much in the divisional team. Until this event, which was a while before the outbreak, although I was aware of Raj and his reputation, I had never worked with him directly. I got invited to a company-wide collaboration event in America, which we usually use for technical training and innovation discussion. We got there, and there were some initial social events and meet and greets. Raj was amongst the group, and his general demeanor seemed appropriate for the reputation which followed him. We went into the first day bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. I was assigned to a group of 10 people to work on a problem with some coding. All was going well, until we came to do some group presentations. For our group, a young woman named Natalie was speaking for our results. It all seemed to go okay, but after the session was over, Raj asked to see Natalie out in the hall. From inside the room, we could hear Raj literally screaming at her. Many offensive slurs were used, and we could hear banging on the wall as well. Natalie returned to the room a sobbing mess, much to the shock of everyone. Raj returned as if nothing had happened. This pattern continued over the course of the week. Raj would single out people for these one-on-one performance critiques. He would go into detail about how work was substandard, and how they needed to improve, all while taking group photos for corporate comms for the higher-ups, orchestrating shots to make us all look like one big happy family. I spoke to some of my own team back home about this in my downtime, and it does turn out that this has always been rumored behavior for him, but no one ever knew someone who had experienced this before. I don't know what the job culture is like for this role in a place like America, but in Scotland we have dignity at work regulations. Performance criticism is fine, but not when you are engaging in ritualistic humiliation of your employees. I knew exactly what I was going to do. For the next few days, I made sure that I was delivering more presentations than anyone else, and really making an effort to attract attention. As hoped, he asked me for a chat, and pulled me into the hall. He didn't wait for the door to close before starting his rant. Experiencing it firsthand was interesting. He claimed I had no idea what I was talking about, even though it had likely been about 20 years since he did any technical work himself. He was vile, shouting and spitting in my face. I also learned what the banging noises were. He would punch doors and slam his hands on the wall near me, as if to try and intimidate me. I was prepared mentally, and just smiled and nodded during the entire rant. He looked angry that I was reacting this way, and by the end of it I thought he was legitimately going to burst a blood vessel. When he was finished, I asked him if he was done. He told me to get out of his sight, and that's when I did it. I gave him a Glasgow kiss. For those unfamiliar, it is a headbutt. And it is not the first headbutt I've delivered in my life, having been brought up near Glasgow. He collapsed to the floor in shock, holding his bloody nose and looking up at me. I leaned down, and in my most Scottish accent, I whispered to him, "If you ever disrespect me, or my colleagues again, I'll kick the utter F out of you next time, you a-hole." I went back in the room, while he did not. Inevitably I got the HR call. Raj was in the room as well, and I could see that he had 2 black eyes as a result of the headbutt. I was asked to explain myself, and I told the truth, mostly. I explained about his abusive behavior, but focused specifically on the hand slamming, and how it had been intimidating me. It hadn't really, but I massively played up on this aspect of the encounter. I described the headbutt as a reaction when he slammed the wall right next to my head with his hands. I wasn't sure what story he had told them, but I was sent away after this. I ultimately ended up with a disciplinary on my record, but no further consequences. Other team members were interviewed over the next few days, and once the pattern of abuse was established, Raj was terminated from the company. The most satisfying part of this was that the day after, when everyone on the course went out for dinner, Natalie insisted that he stand next to her for the division group photograph, black eyes and all. I have to think that photograph contributed to his downfall in some way. Late bloomers, when was the moment you realized you were a lesbian? I'm 26 and I've known I liked girls since a young age. My dad, up until this very day, always hints that he knows I'm gay and he'll be perfectly fine with it, but I've never pursued women. I felt like I couldn't? I don't know why, but yeah. I think it clicked in my head finally that I wasn't interested in men like a week ago. Whenever I talk to a man in a romantic way, I never felt those butterflies or a sense of excitement. I've never been interested in sex with men, physical touch, nothing. But I started talking to this girl about a month ago and I'm absolutely obsessed and giddy whenever we talk. I get flustered when I look at her. I literally have a crush on her and I've never felt that with a man, and I've come across really good men, but there was just always something missing.
My husband has been lying to me about our finances and we are screwed. The title is basically the story. I'm also to blame for this. I realize that. We divided household responsibilities pretty evenly, but we don't split every responsibility down the middle, and finances were his job. He's better at them. I thought he was better at them. We are $50,000 in credit card debt. I did not know about this. $50,000 on a home equity loan. I did know about this. 2 months behind on our mortgage and severely behind on a car payment. I quit my job when we decided to have my middle child 3 years ago. Then we had our youngest a year ago. I thought we were fine. We should have been fine. I don't understand what the F happened or why he waited so long to tell me. I trusted him completely. I would never have believed this. I love him so much. By all accounts, we had an ideal marriage, or we did. I thought we did. I have no idea how we ever come back from this. It will take years to pay this off. I am in school full-time but will need to drop out because we can obviously no longer afford childcare while I'm in class. That just sets us back even more because my earning potential is lower. The most effed up part is that my dad did this exact same thing to my mom. It was awful to live through as a teenager. It was a serious contributor in being resistant to commitment or ever relying on anyone for anything. My husband obviously knew about this. It was my #1 reservation when I was quitting my job. I can't believe I was so stupid. This is my worst fear coming true, and I have no idea what to do.
What's the most heartbreaking conversation you've ever heard? A few years ago, I was sitting on the bus and I overheard this child and mother talking. They were discussing something to do with the kid's piano lesson. She looked about 7 or so. She was speaking clearly and normally, but as I was directly across from them on a fairly packed bus, I could tell something was weird, just from the way she was postured. She was looking directly at the ground and gripping the seat very strongly. I found this strangely bracing, like she was going to cry or something, so I started paying attention to their talk. It went like this, with her mom going, "Are you excited to see Steven and practice piano today?" Kid, "No." "Yeah." "Mom, ha ha, no and yeah? What does that mean? Don't you like Steven?" And then I hear clear as a bell, "Steven won't stop touching me." I've never watched someone go white before. The woman had a very medium-toned complexion, but as soon as her daughter said this, she went very pale. I was also totally stunned. No one expected this, and many other people looked right at the girl in shock. The 2 things that were saddest to me was that the girl looked up from the floor and right at me first as I was in front of her, and she looked so ashamed. All sorts of awful things were racing through my mind, like who is Steven? The instructor? Probably. Is he related to her? How long has this been happening? Could she mean that he just poked or teased her or something else innocent, and we're all misunderstanding? But no, the girl's face was a dead giveaway that she knew he was doing something disgraceful and dirty, not just playing. The mother yanked on the string to halt the bus and it lurched back a bit, nearly missing the stop, scooping her daughter up and whispering stuff like, "Don't worry, we're going to get help right now. When did this start? You can tell mommy this is important," and scrambling to get up and leave. The kid looked like she broke something, like she was being a tattletale. I wanted to shout at her, "You did the right thing. Don't ever feel bad to get help." Or something to shake those thoughts out of her. It felt so terrible to see her looking guilty for calling out whoever was pervertedly touching her in a place that should be safe, a school, a music lesson. How horrible is that? And the mother, I wanted to say I'm so sorry that her trust was betrayed and this gross asshole is molesting her child, or worse. I wanted to offer her help and get a team to go lynch this monster, or at least report him or jail him, anything. But like everyone else around me, we just froze. No one said anything. We just all leaned back into our seats as they bolted off and avoided eye contact. To this day I regret not standing up and trying to help, just showing the effort that I care and this is a big deal, but I guess I didn't want to interfere in something so private, or maybe it'd only feel worse to her if some stranger tried to assist it. I don't know. I still feel conflicted about how I reacted, how everyone stood still, but I also didn't want to barge into her life without her asking me to. It made me scared and sad for children everywhere. It really woke me up that this can happen to any parent at any time. Someone respected and responsible can ruin your child's life while you leave the room under the pretense of an activity or Sunday school or band practice. I can't imagine how the mother and child are dealing with this today. Watching it unfold in front of me felt wrong, sad and shocking all at the same time. I feel bad that I witnessed something so personal, but at the least, the girl said something and now she's not on her way by bus to her predator anymore. I just found out why my boyfriend never holds my toddler niece. I, 27, female, have been with my boyfriend Jay, 28, male, for 5 years. We've both been very close with each other's families, and we've even talked about marriage. However, one touchy subject is children. Whenever we discuss it, he gets kind of standoffish. He doesn't really dismiss the idea, though. It's just that he doesn't seem invested. I've always wanted kids, and he just always says he's fine with whatever makes me happy. Ever since, I've been content with this situation. However, things escalated during this holiday season. Our setup has always been at Jay spends Christmas Eve and dinner with my family, then I spend Christmas Day with his family. This was the first Christmas I'll spend with my first and only niece. To female, Anna. She spent her first Christmas in the hospital due to her health condition, but she's okay now, so I made sure to spend a lot of time with her. We played a lot, we opened gifts together, and I even reenacted Anna's favorite storybook using her favorite doll. We even had matching outfits. My sister Amy, some relief from childcare the entire day. However, Amy also said she noticed that Jay, who was just either sitting on the couch watching me or helping my mom with the dishes, was kinda distant with Anna. I told her I've also noticed that before. And I just chalked it up to maybe Jay was hesitant and awkward to play with Anna because he feels he's just my boyfriend. Then Amy said she won't mind since she and her husband already treat Jay as part of our family. I then went back to Jay and encouraged him to play with Anna and help us set up her new dollhouse, but he said he's not feeling too well. He ended up drinking a few more beers and stayed on the porch by himself, scrolling on his phone. I didn't press harder and thought he might really just be feeling under the weather. I just want to add for context that Jay is an alcoholic. He's a sweet, wonderful, funny man. Who's sometimes broody and deep in thought, but he's never abusive, manipulative, or moody. And he only drinks on special occasions. The next day, on Christmas Day, we had lunch with Jay's family. Afterward, I volunteered for cleanup to help Jay's mom, Mary, and brother John. Jay's family was the best any significant other could ever ask for. They're very sweet and supportive of us, but they're never prying. They always check up on us, but they never overstep. So as we were cleaning up, Mary asked me how my sister's baby was. They helped with the bills when Anna was hospitalized last year. I told them that Anna is in great condition now and that she already spent the Christmas at home. They were very delighted. Upon hearing this, then I shared with them the thing I noticed about Jay. Initially, I thought maybe Mary could just give me advice on how to approach the issue with Jay, since he's clearly not the playing with kids kind of guy. But then John casually said something like, "Oh, because of Rosie?" Then Mary quickly shushed him. Rosie was the daughter of Jay and John's eldest sister, Beth. I never knew the actual details because everyone was very secretive about it, but all I knew was that Rosie passed away when she was just 3 years old, and Beth and her husband moved away afterward. I never met them in person. So later that night, when Mary, John, and the other family members got a bit more drunk and Jay was already sleeping in the bedroom, they told me the story. I didn't force them or anything. Apparently Jay, being the youngest of the siblings, was really close with Rosie back then. Jay was just around 14 years old when Rosie was born, so he became the super fun uncle like I am now with Anna. He was actually Rosie's best friend. Then on summer of 2012, Jay was playing with Rosie outside. He was blowing bubbles and she was chasing and popping them when a speeding car driven by a woman who was distracted on her phone scooted into the yard toward Rosie's direction. Jay reacted quickly and was able to reach and grab Rosie. So the car actually hit him, but the impact of the crash caused Rosie's head to whiplash as Jay hugged her. Jay was in a coma for 3 days and had multiple severe injuries and internal bleeding. But Rosie didn't make it. Everything was caught by the neighbor's CCTV, so everyone knew that Jay was a hero for trying to protect Rosie. It was even covered by the local news. But Beth, who was understandably in grief, resented Jay for not being able to save her daughter. Beth and her husband then decided to move to another country to cope with their grief and start a new life, and they've had minimal contact with the family ever since. Jay, meanwhile, took the loss really hard. He blamed himself for not being able to save Rosie and not being able to attend her funeral since he was still at the hospital at that time. Mary said that Jay was never the same after that. He never went near kids and he became a lot colder, quieter, more reserved and antisocial. He also had anger issues, but it, thankfully, went away. I haven't had any issues with this. We also live in an area where people don't really believe in therapy, so Jay never received professional help. After learning all of this, I bawled my eyes out because I never knew Jay was carrying such a heavy burden. The whole incident became a taboo family secret that no one mentions in fear of Jay breaking down of doing something he might regret. Although, to be fair, he's never had violent or self-harm tendencies ever since, so this was just a precaution. They also never told me before because they assumed Jay would be the one to tell me. But I told them that he never did and that I never really asked him. I then thanked everyone for letting me in on this, and I told them that I'd talk to Jay about it when the time is right. They understood, and they said I could just ring them up if I need help or support in any way. For now, I just want Jay to enjoy the holidays and his remaining vacation days from work. Now, I don't really know how to start with him. I know seeking professional help to process all the trauma and grief, even if it's been over a decade ago, would be the top priority, but I don't know how to bring it up to him. I don't even know when is the right time to bring it up. I just want that I love him no matter what, and that I'll support him in every step toward his healing, especially if we're to form a family of our own.
My brothers have restored my faith in humanity. When I was 6, after my parents had my younger twin brothers, my mom started teaching me how to change diapers, prepare milk, how to carry my brothers and how to do house chores. I would take over the majority of it as I got older. Growing up, my parents would constantly tell me that I'm the oldest so I have the responsibilities of taking care of my brothers. When I turned 10, my parents decided to focus on their business so I had to be my brother's caretaker, from making sure they finished their homework to cooking, cleaning and washing up. When I turned 16, after getting my driving license, my parents bought me a car and everything was thrown to me. I would drive my brothers to school, dentist and doctor's appointments. I would attend any of my brother's school events whether it is major ones or minor ones because I know how lonely it feels without anyone there. I would chaperone their outing with their friends so I knew their friends' parents. My parents wouldn't attend any school event, except for the parents-teacher meeting, citing it all as time wasting. Anything that involves us would be time wasting in their eyes. Birthday was also considered time wasting so my brothers and I have a tradition of baking cakes and celebrating our birthday together. Graduation was also time wasting. Funny enough, my parents' friend's birthday wasn't considered time wasting. My parents would prioritize friendships over their children every time. There is no such thing as family vacations, my parents would rather go on a vacation with their friends. The only thing my parents will provide is financial support and that is all. For my parents, as long as we don't bother them with our issues, they are more than happy to provide things financially. When I graduated from high school, I had the opportunity to leave for college but I chose to stay and attend the local college because my brothers are still young and I don't want to abandon them like our parents did. When my brothers graduated, the 3 of us decided to move out together. My parents were more than happy to pay for the apartment. I only started dating in my 20s and had a few failed relationships because they could not accept my brother's position in my life. The only one that accepted and got along with my brothers is my fiancé Dean. Dean and I have been together for almost 6 years now and he's wonderful. He understands my brother's position in my life and actually makes the effort to hang out with my brothers, which led to their monthly boys-only night. Dean's family are amazing, they accepted my brothers and I with open hearts and arms. We are included in every family event. Dean's family have 3 sons, no daughter, and his dad would invite my brothers to his family boys camping trip. And I would get spoiled by Dean's mom on Our Lady's Day Out. It was amazing experiencing such warmth. A week ago, my brothers sat me down and told me that now that they are very financially stable and have their own apartment, they wanted to give me a % of their salary so that I can quit my job and do whatever I want. They want me to experience things that I had missed out in the past, travel or indulge in my hobby. I was surprised by it and when asked why, my brothers said their friends were talking about giving their parents money for them to ease their finances and also for their parents to slow down and enjoy their life. When my brothers heard this, the first person that came to their mind was me because I raised them. I didn't answer because I was baffled by it, so they told me to think about it. When I talked to my fiancé about this conversation and how surprised I was by it, he grinned and told me that he actually knew about it because my brothers had a discussion with him about it. I guess I had a confused look on my face, because he just poked my forehead and said you are practically their mom and dad, and reminded me of the things I did for my brothers growing up. When Dean and I were dating, I was pretty vague on how it was like growing up, just enough for him to know that I took care of my brothers. Turns out, my brothers took it upon themselves to tell him all the details during one of their boys' night out when Dean and I were dating for 1 year. According to Dean, my brothers asked him about his intention for our future, and when Dean said he was serious, they then told him about our childhood, how I raised them and that they thought of me as their parent, which made him decide then that I'm the one for him. Apparently he told his family about it too, which makes his family love me and told him if he doesn't marry me, they would disown him and adopt my brothers and I. Which also reminded me that my brothers would make the effort to buy me flowers and make me meals on Mother and Father's Day. I would get expensive gifts, like jewelry and bags.
I forced myself on my sister when we were younger, Should I still be held to what I did 20 years ago? I was 10 and she was 4 at the time. It was on 3 or 4 occasions over the span of a month. I knew what I was doing was wrong but not the severity. I didn't learn about things like consent or anything until I was 16, although I wasn't a shithead in between. I regret what I did, so much so I made it a mission of mine to right the wrong, if that's even possible. My sister didn't remember any of this happened but I still wanted to make things right. This is something that haunted and still haunts me every day. Whenever I'm thinking of nothing, I think of what I did. I know it doesn't compare to how she felt or feels but it's still something that hurts me, too. When she turned 17 and I finished college, I bought her first car. Completely paid off. Just a gift from Big Bro, no strings attached. When she wanted to go to college at 20, I fronted the bill. Another gift from Big Bro. To her, this was just me being the best brother possible, but to me, I was trying to make amends for what I did. I was and still am in a good financial situation, so is my sister to some extent due to me taking some of these burdens off her shoulder. These are just the 2 biggest things. I've traveled with her, all on me, I've been there for her, she considered me her best friend despite me having this dark secret. Last year, I guess it all clicked with her and she began to remember the abuse I did. I can't be mad at her, that's not my place, it was my fault. I admitted my wrong to her and she tried to blackmail me for money. I refused and she told our parents. For something I did when I was 10 years old, 20 years ago, I've been all but excommunicated from my family. I had to delete my Facebook because of the vitriol I received from her friends, my friends, our family, even strangers. She made a point to make it as public as possible. If I wasn't self-employed, I might have lost my job, I don't know. I know nothing I can do can reverse what I did, but should I be held to what I did as a little kid? I'm not the same person, no one is the same person they were when they were 10. I tried my hardest to make it up to her, even if she didn't remember until recently. I wanted to be the best I could be for my sister. I don't know if this makes it up to her. Probably not considering the current events right now. People who grew up with strict parents, what was their most unreasonable rule? My mom was insanely controlling about food. Weird rules were in place like 1 slice of lunch meat per sandwich. No one but her was allowed to cook. She'd make 1 giant batch of spaghetti or something and we'd have leftovers for days, so she only had to make dinner twice a week. She did not work or anything, just didn't like cooking every day. Breakfast was cold cereal and you'd only be allowed a small bowl with just enough milk to moisten it. Occasionally she'd bake something she called corn toasties, which was simply cornbread baked in a sheet pan. She'd cut them into squares and fill the freezer with them and we could have one of those for breakfast as an alternative. Once when I was 14 I bought a pack of hot dogs at the store, snuck them home, and lit the grill. I was almost done cooking them when she came out screaming about fire hazards and swatted the plate out of my hand. She had been making spaghetti, what an ungrateful little bastard I was. So then she orders a pizza for the rest of my family, wraps individual servings of spaghetti in freezer paper, and puts them away. She tells me that I will be eating nothing else until it's all gone. Took about 2 months to choke it all down. Went without eating a lot of days. I was also grounded for over a year.
Who is the creepiest man you've ever met? A week before my 10th birthday, I walked to the corner store with a $5 bill and picked up a jar of ragu for my mom. On my way home, a man I'd never seen before fell in step with me and began talking. "Hi," he said, cheerfully. "My name is Dr. Ramsey. I'm a pediatrician. Do you know what a pediatrician is?" I walked along silently, not replying and fervently hoping he would take that as a sign he should leave me alone. Subtleties were not his strong suit, though, because he kept right on chattering. "Are your parents looking for a pediatrician for you? Of course, you're almost a big girl now, you'll be needing another kind of doctor soon, won't you? That's okay though. They can still bring you to me until then. What's your name? You have beautiful hair." I was just on my way to get some suckers for the candy jar in my office. "Do you like suckers?" Thankfully, we were nearing my house, so I ran forward, up the back steps, and through the kitchen door. I didn't know it then, but that was the beginning of a very long, very scary ordeal. It didn't take long after that for Dr. Ramsey to begin showing up. At first, it seemed benign enough, at least to a kid. He would drive by nearly every day, smiling and waving. I told my mom, who said maybe it was on his way home from work. But then, the phone calls began. One day my dad called me into the living room and sat me down. He asked about the day Dr. Ramsey followed me home, and if I talked to him. He said I wasn't in trouble, but that I needed to tell him the truth. I told him no, and he asked if I was sure. I told him no again, and he frowned, then asked, "Then how does he know your name?" I didn't know. It turns out, that was not all he knew. He knew my sister's name as well. Pretty soon, neither my sister nor I were allowed to answer the phone. He called several times a day. At first, neither of us knew what he was saying. Then, one night, one of my brothers told us that he was telling my parents that he was going to hurt me. My dad had called the police, but as this was before there were any stalking laws, there was not a lot they could do. They told my parents to call back if he tried anything. My dad then called a friend of his from back in the day, who happened to be a cop. For the next month, my dad's friend escorted me to and from school. Suddenly, life as I knew it came screeching to a halt. I couldn't walk to school alone, I couldn't play outside, I couldn't walk to 7 to 11. Then one afternoon my sister, two of my brothers, my mom, and I were in the kitchen. One of my brothers saw a glimpse of someone in the garage. Dr. Ramsey came bolting out of the garage, my brothers chasing after him. They ran all the way to Cherokee Park, where he lost them in the trees. My parents called the police again, but nothing came of it. The only information they had was a description and a name that was almost certainly fake. A couple of weeks later, we woke to find our dog hanging from the side porch. She was a gorgeous saddleback German Shepherd, born the same day I was. We were all devastated. The cops said there was no evidence it was him, and ruled it accidental, but none of us believed that. His phone calls became more informative in the meantime. He would talk about who was home, and who wasn't. If my brother would say my dad was home, he would tell him who was really in the house. He also would talk about the house itself, about the window in the kitchen he could easily open with a knife from the outside even when it was locked, and about the French doors that connected the living room to the side porch and how the lock could be opened from the outside if you jiggled it just right. That night, my dad put in some carpenter nails at the bottom of the French doors until he could get a new lock ordered. My parents had to go to a company event for my dad's work. My older brothers were at the roller skating rink. My sister was on the phone with her best friend. My little brother was on the floor asleep. I was watching Devo on the midnight special with Wolfman Jack. It was late. Suddenly, the top of the French door swung inward, and in the few milliseconds, before the nails in the bottom caused them to snap back, I could see his silhouette. My sister whipped the phone at the television, and we ran up the stairs. About halfway up, we realized our little brother was still asleep on the living room floor. As quietly as we could, we slipped back down the stairs to get him. We all went into our bedroom and didn't turn on the light, this way we could see outside. We watched out the window for a while, and when we didn't find him, we crept down the hall to our brother's room to look. We looked down and could see someone standing at the back door. He knocked, loudly. "What do you want?" My sister asked out the window. He stepped back and said, "Is this the Mercy residence? I have a pizza for delivery. Can you come to the door?" She scoffed at him, declaring she was not stupid, she could see he didn't have a pizza, and she was calling the cops. He left. A short while later, my brothers returned home. We told them what happened and they walked around the yard, watching for him. They came back in, and things settled down. By now we'd pretty much given up calling the cops because it never helped, so we just went back in, each of us carrying a knife from the kitchen just in case. Eventually, one of my brothers went into the kitchen to get a bowl of cereal as a snack. He kept looking around the kitchen, through the doorway into the dining room, and at the windows. He didn't see anything, but he could feel his eyes on him, so he went closer to the door to try to see better. The kitchen lights were reflecting on the windows of the door so he still couldn't see. He stepped closer, then closer again, until he was right up to the door, then cupped his hands on either side of his head so he could see. There on the other side of the window pane was Dr. Ramsey, smiling back at him. He turned to yell for my older brothers, and when he looked back again, he was gone. They went out again to look for him but didn't see him. A couple of weeks later, I was at school and we were outside on the playground during recess. I was swinging upside down when I saw that now familiar blue Ford Galaxy cruising by, moving slowly. There he was, smiling and waving. He called my name, and I ran to the teacher and told her. The school had been told all about him. She took me inside right away and called my mom. That same day my mom had gotten a call from the school office asking her to verify that my dad was picking me up, as he'd called to say he was on his way. He wasn't. Not long after that, I woke up one night, thirsty. I went down to the kitchen for a drink and there, sitting alone in the dark, was my dad. On the table, a gun. He was tired of the police waiting until Dr. Ramsey tried something, he was tired of his children being terrorized, and he was tired of being afraid every time he left for work that something would happen to us while he was gone. I sat with him for a time, watching, before he sent me back to bed. These events, and many more, took place over a period of around 18 months. Then, as suddenly as it began, it was over. He had vanished from our lives, the phone calls, the drive-by with the creepy waves, everything. For a long time, during and after the Dr. Ramsey days, I would have a recurring nightmare in which I would wake up to find him standing over me as I slept. It took a long time before I felt like a kid again. I don't know what happened to him when he disappeared. I don't know if he was in a car wreck, locked in prison, or in a coma. But sometimes I wonder if the wait ended for my dad when he was sitting in the darkened kitchen one night. I don't know, and I'm not sure I want to. I found out that my cheating husband tells other women that she is single because he was depressed. Now, I finally had the courage to leave him. I have been with my husband, let's call him Kyle, for 7 years, married for 4. Our relationship began as something too good to be true. He was amazing and made my life so much brighter, and we were truly best friends from the start. We were the couple people who would say, "I just want something like you and Kyle, you two are so perfect for each other," and I agreed. We weren't each other's typical type and it felt like the universe brought us together. A year and a half later, he planned an elaborate proposal and we got engaged. It was magical, I couldn't have planned anything more special and romantic. We planned to get married a year and a half later. After a year, we went on our bachelor and bachelorette trips, and we had our first fight after being together for 2.5 years. Since my bachelorette party was a month before his, he set some ground rules: call every night when you get back to the house and no hanging out at houses with men, for me, and women, for him. My bachelorette party went perfectly without even the temptation of breaking the rules, just a weekend hanging out on the beach with my girls. Skip to his bachelor party, and he disappears for 6 hours. No calls, no texts. Then I see on one of his friends' social media posts that they are hanging out with a group of girls, and in the video, Kyle is standing really close to a girl in a red bikini. They are talking and she is holding his phone in her hand. I tried calling and texting him and his friends for hours without a response. When I finally got in contact with him, he said his phone was inside charging and he was drunk and didn't think them hanging out with the girls would be an issue. I'm not stupid. I know he most likely cheated on me, but I chose to go forward with the wedding, which was now only 3 months away, partly because I loved him and knew I'd forgive him eventually, and my parents had already spent a lot of money on our wedding. Our wedding was beautiful and it was a perfect day. Shortly after, the virus hit and we were stuck not being able to live our normal life of going out and traveling often. 9 months into marriage, I found out that he had created a fake social media account and was following several women. One was his ex. I made him pack his things and move out of our house. After being separated for 3 weeks, I found no evidence that he was contacting any of these women. He promised he'd never do something like that again. I forgave him and he moved back in. My family was also encouraging me to get back together with him. Our relationship was never better. It felt stronger and we were more connected. We bought our first house 1.5 years later and found out I was pregnant 4 months after we moved in. This is where everything begins to crumble. We did talk about me getting off of my birth control and decided it was the right time for us to start trying for a baby. But when I told him I was pregnant, he did not have the reaction I thought he would have. A big reason why I fell in love with this man is because I knew he'd be a great father. He's amazing with other kids and always talked about wanting a family of his own. When it came to my pregnancy, he didn't want to talk about anything baby related and seemed to pretend the baby didn't exist. He started going out more without me and planned more guys' trips. I didn't mind. I'm more of a homebody and loved being at home, nesting and preparing for the baby to come. I thought he was feeling overwhelmed with the life change that would be here soon and just needed some time to let his hair down. I am not a jealous person. I was very confident that he wouldn't cheat on me because he was my best friend. I did everything for him and his friends would often talk about how lucky he was to have me as his partner. He also began to treat me as more of a roommate during this crisis. We have had a few small arguments in the past about him taking advantage of me cooking and cleaning for him without him showing appreciation. He stopped taking me on dates or even asking me if I would want to go with him and his friends when they'd hang out. This was shocking to me because we had been inseparable for the last 5 years. I found out 3 weeks ago that he cheated on me while on one of his boys' trips last summer. He met a girl at a bar, bought her drinks, danced and made out, and even took a picture together. They exchanged numbers and the next day she found out he was married and he blocked her on all of his social media and her phone number. This is how I found her. 2 weeks before I found out about this girl, I found his anonymous online profile and saw that he had been sending explicit photos. I confronted him and he apologized, saying he was depressed. I had already planned to leave and move in with my mom for a while. I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something else that I was missing, so I checked his blocked accounts on social media and thought it was strange that there was a girl I didn't know on the list. I messaged her and she spilled the tea, even telling me that his friends were lying with him, telling her he was single. I confronted him and he said she was lying. Of course, I left and moved in with my mom. Since then I have found out other information, not as damning, but an activity that I wouldn't want my husband doing behind my back. I feel sick and devastated that he could do something like this to not only me but to our child. Did I mention I was at home alone for 8 days with our 5-month-old baby while he was on this trip where he made out with another girl? I feel like I sacrificed so much of my happiness for this man, trying to make his life as happy as possible, and he gave it all up for what? Like I said, I'm not stupid, so I know there are probably more instances of him cheating, but I don't want to know. I'm already done.
Terrorize my family? Enjoy losing everything and going back to jail. Hello, this is a long post, so buckle up for the ride. Myself and my wife had just had our second child and moved into a duplex in an amazing neighborhood, had its own playground even. We moved in and greeted the neighbors, bunch of younger people, but they seemed okay. The first day after moving in we find that they're gone and they're left their 7-year-old, on a school day, outside our door with a bag of goldfish and a note asking us to watch him while they went out. QCPS call number 1. The neighbors and me got along really well. Old guy next door repaired bikes for a hobby and the next door neighbor did woodworking and would always come over to see the kids and sent his grandkids over to play too. They warned us that our upstairs neighbors were trouble, constant traffic going in and out and parties every single night. This was 110% the truth. It got to the point we couldn't sleep at night and we had multiple altercations to the point it was full-blown yelling matches. The landlord was useless and would do nothing to get rid of them, so I bided my time. Eventually one night they came home in their red Mazda 3 and it was destroyed. They must have hit someone and ran, so I called the RCMP to let them know, as at the very least I figured they'd get in deep shit, but oh man, I had no idea what I had just unleashed. Turns out the douchebag had a warrant out for his arrest for drug trafficking. He got hauled away in cuffs that night and entitled woman 2 got a visit from CPS again as they left their son home alone again. This wasn't once or twice, it was every single day. So my wife went digging for names and found the mother on Facebook. Using public record searches we found out that they owed Easy Home nearly $48K in assets as they had taken off from the original address with all of their furniture including TVs and a huge sound system. 48 hours later the sheriff was there with a box truck emptying their house. Took the beds, couches, TVs, the annoying subwoofer system, kitchen set and even the dressers. CPS came shortly after and removed the child from the house. I didn't enjoy seeing him taken away but they never fed him and he was always in the same clothing and it was falling apart. We went out of our way to make sure he had full meals when we could not gonna let a kid starve. The douchebag went to jail for drug possession. He was out on bail and hid the drugs in a dresser they took. Entitled Woman 1 went to jail for assaulting the sheriff and Entitled Woman 2 actually had a happy ending. Far as I know after she lost her son she went through multiple programs to clean herself up and started working to provide for her son. Ran into her a couple years ago and she thanked me for what I did. I got revenge on the drug dealer and his girlfriend and thankfully helped someone get on the right path. What is the rudest thing anyone has ever done to you in your own house? I'd never known my father's side of the family that well but had been in contact with my second cousin for a short time. Around the time I'd had my second child and she was expecting her third, we fell out of touch. Several years later, I moved to a new state and she contacted me wanting to stay at my house over the summer with her kids. I said sure and was genuinely looking forward to seeing her again. I was very busy over the summer and exhausted with the added stress of moving from an apartment to our new home. Meanwhile, I didn't hear from my cousin at all and she didn't answer my calls, so I assumed she'd had a change of plans and wouldn't be coming my way, after all. She ended up calling while she was on the road the day before stopping by. She said she was actually going to stay with her sister but had some loads of laundry that she wanted to do at my house first. To be polite, I said sure. She stopped by my house and did many loads of laundry, eventually saying that it was too late to go to her sister's that night. The next morning, she was on her way to take her son to the ice skating rink. She said she hadn't had time to go to the grocery store and would be at the ice rink all day and needed snacks. I told her that she could take some food from my house, whereupon she immediately grabbed some grocery bags, opened my cupboards and started swiping food off the shelves. She proceeded to stay with me and not her sister and to swipe groceries off my shelves on a daily basis to take with her to the skating rink. She said that she would cook us a meal, and then called one evening saying she had stopped over at her sister's and would cook for her sister instead of us. As I mentioned, my cousin came to stay with us with her 3 children and we gave them all rooms to sleep in. She slept in a room with a brand new bed and a brand new mattress, which was costly. She complained that the bed was too high off the floor and that there was no fan in the window and that it was overly hot. She never seemed to understand we had just moved in and were under stress. Finally, I woke up one day and saw the bed sheets in the washing machine in the morning. I knew she would never wash my sheets out of the kindness of her heart, so I looked in the bedroom and it turned out that her son had peed all over the brand new mattress. For the amount of pee there was, she clearly had not taken him to the toilet before she went to sleep at night. That evening, when she returned from the skating rink with her kids, I said something that ticked her off. She started insulting my marriage in front of her children, saying that I was an idiot to offer my husband coffee in the morning, among other very personal things that were absolutely none of her business. I told her to find somewhere else to sleep and have not seen her since. That was 20 years ago. I talked the situation over with her mother, who said that she blamed herself because she had always given her daughter money and had allowed her to take advantage. Years later, she said that her daughter told her she needed money, took her mother's funds that were meant for tax returns, and got some new tattoos with the cash. Overall, this experience helped me realize that if you're not close with your relatives, it's hard to walk a fine line and find a balance. Sometimes, you're better off keeping your distance from people you don't know very well, even if they're family.
I haven't been able to be intimate with my boyfriend since an incident with his best friend. I, 22 female, have been dating my boyfriend, 25 male, for 3 years. We met through mutual friends and since then we have been inseparable. My boyfriend lived with his best mate when we met, and after a year he asked me to move in with them as we all got along, where my boyfriend pays the rent and bills. His best mate, let's call him Kyle, is 26. Him and Kyle have been friends for their whole lives. He has always been welcoming and friendly. I have never been left alone with him as I never needed to be, as I'm either working or with my boyfriend. But about 6 months ago my boyfriend went to see his family for a week and I couldn't get any time off to go with him, and Kyle was going to his family's house so I was meant to be home alone. Kyle ended up coming home early, which I didn't think anything of. Until I got ready for bed one night. I wore my normal bedtime clothes, which is just an oversized top and shorts, and I went to the kitchen to get a drink and I was making small talk with Kyle, until he got too close and put his hands on my hips and pulled me against him. So I asked what he was doing while trying to move away. He said I obviously wanted him to do that because of what I was wearing while my boyfriend wasn't home. While holding me really tight, I had bruises. When I said it's not what I wanted, he said I was overreacting and it was a mistake and I should keep it to myself. He let go and I called my best friend to come pick me up, which she did, and I stayed with her until my boyfriend got back. When he did come back I pretended nothing happened for a couple weeks and avoided Kyle completely. I also didn't make love with my boyfriend. Until one day Kyle and my boyfriend were going out and I always hugged them both when leaving, and Kyle hugged me like nothing had happened. I felt like I had to tell my boyfriend, so the next day I told him and showed him the bruises, and the first things he said was, "I'm sorry I put you in that position," which made me cry. He asked why I didn't say anything sooner, and I was honest and said I didn't know how, but I also didn't want to ruin his friendship. My boyfriend obviously confronted Kyle, who just said I made it up and that I was a liar. But my boyfriend believed me, so he kicked Kyle out. He gave him a day to get his things and go. So Kyle has moved in with his mate, and my boyfriend has completely removed him from his life and refuses to take his calls. Just said his focus is on me, even asked if I wanted to report it because of the bruises. Some of our friends are saying I overreacted and I shouldn't have said anything and I put myself in that position, and that I ruined my boyfriend's friendship. One even told my boyfriend that I probably slept with Kyle and that's what the marks were from. A few of them said I'm in the right and that it's Kyle's fault. I'm now second-guessing myself completely and I honestly feel like I could have handled it differently. But I also haven't been able to be intimate with my boyfriend since this all happened. I just don't feel comfortable. Any advice? My boyfriend threw my puppy against the wall during an argument, please help. My boyfriend is ex-military. I always knew that he had extreme anger issues, but never in my life would I think that he would take it out on an innocent animal like I watched him do the other night. I feel completely traumatized after witnessing him abuse my 3-month-old puppy in the way he did, and I have no idea what to do next. I feel completely trapped and terrified. As I said, my boyfriend has always had some anger issues, and he usually gets angry at me when he thinks other men are checking me out in public or he sees that random guys have followed me on Instagram. We have had so many fights where I have tried to assure him that I would never cheat on him and he is the only man in my life. But he always ends up screaming at me and calling me a liar and saying that I like the attention of other guys, and if I didn't, I would dress differently or delete my Instagram. Over the 8 months that we've been dating, I have gotten so used to his outbursts and his constant screaming, even though I know it's totally unhealthy. I know for sure that I'm in a toxic relationship. I want to leave him, but I am truly scared of him. He is ex-military and an extremely strong, connected man. I fear that if I leave him he will track me down and hurt me physically, or worse. We don't live together, but he spends a lot of time at my apartment. 2 weeks ago I adopted a German Shepherd puppy. I remember seeing him at the shelter and instantly falling in love with him. Ever since I brought him home my boyfriend has been complaining about him. He says that he stinks, he's too loud, and that I should have never gotten a dog. I love my boyfriend, but I love my puppy in a different way since he is just an innocent little animal, and it's killing me that I brought this innocent baby into a dangerous situation. The other night my boyfriend was screaming at me because he had noticed that I had a new male Instagram follower. He was throwing and breaking things usual, and insisting that I didn't care about him because I wasn't changing my ways. I really was just exhausted since I had a long day. Honestly, I was just exhausted with him. I wasn't really engaging in the fight, I was just laying on my bed staring at the ceiling, trying to dissociate. I guess this only made him more upset because the next thing I know he picked up my puppy so hard and fast that the poor thing literally squealed out of fear. My boyfriend screamed in my face, "So is this what I have to do for you to give a F?" And to my horror, he hurled my innocent baby directly at the wall. My poor baby made another squealing noise, and I will never be able to forget the way that he ran away from us into a corner, shaking and whimpering. I started crying and trying to console my puppy, but he was still scared since my boyfriend was still in the room yelling at us both. I just cowered in the corner with my dog until my boyfriend eventually left us alone and went to sleep. I'm scared for me and my puppy. I want to get as far as possible as I can from my boyfriend. He's a monster and I cannot believe that I allowed him to take out his anger on my poor innocent baby boy. I know now that I need to do everything I can to protect myself and my new baby, before it's too late.
What was the least enjoyable intimate experience you've ever had? So there was this girl I met on OkCupid. Hipster punk chick. Liberal, friendly, type that worked on an organic farm during the week. My type. Plus she wasn't looking for a relationship, only to do the deed. Sweet. Anyway, she comes over, we smoke a bit, she's exactly as she represented on the internet. So we finally go to my bed, she showed up without a bra or pants on and a skirt, and she asks me to do a bit of eating to start off. I'm always the type to oblige this, so I do. With this type of girl you might guess that she was the kind that doesn't use a razor anywhere for the purposes of making a statement. You'd be right, but whatever, I'm not prejudiced. My only issue was that she smelled strong. Not like bad, just the way they are supposed to smell, but a lot more of it. So I indulged in tangy carpet till she finished the first time. Whoopay. Then we had intimacy. You'd think, a girl this intimacy positive and otherwise a member of this social archetype would be good at it. Nope. Starfish. Wouldn't even angle her body properly so I could get better angles. She was enjoying herself but I wasn't. Asked her to flip over so I could get her from behind. She responded that she didn't feel like it. She did however get on top, and did that crappy grinding that does nothing for the dude. She finished again, I just felt numb. I asked her if she could finish me off with her mouth, and she said yeah. I'm wondering if she could possibly mess up some gawk gawk. Well, she did. She literally just put the head in and did nothing. No head bobbing motion or anything. Just kept it as you would a lollipop with less tongue. I convinced her to use her hand in conjunction with her mouth. That helped bring me marginally closer to finish. Then I told her to talk dirty to me. She pulled her mouth off and responded that she doesn't know how to talk dirty very well but that she can rap. Before I can say anything in response, she launches into a rap, more of a nursery rhyme, about giving gawk gawk and sitting on me. By the time she was done I was turned off. I told her I'd finished despite the evidence to the contrary. We shared a few more cigarettes and she left with my first 2 volumes of Y, The Last Man, because I figured she'd be into its feminist themes. Called me at work a few weeks later several times because she'd left a necklace at my house. I let her come by to get it. She gave me my comics back and said she enjoyed them, and showed me a new stick and poke tattoo that she had just gotten. She had left the car running, so we didn't have intimacy again. Never heard from her again after that. Broke my female friends at a party? Enjoy a taste of your own medicine. I am a 19-year-old freshman, and this year I joined a frat for the first time. It's been a weird experience, and I've found most stereotypes about this lifestyle to be true. In all honesty, before this incident, I was already thinking about leaving my frat since I didn't agree with the way my frat brothers acted or the type of behaviors they tolerated from their friends. Some of my frat brothers have also been giving me poop since many of my best friends happen to be female. There has been more than one instance where one of my frat brothers has made fun of me for keeping those girls around for nothing. Frankly, I don't know how to explain to grown men why friendship is meaningful and important and that it's normal to have friends of all genders. I've always had girl and guy best friends, and I never thought it was weird and still don't. Girl friendship can give you support and advice that you just can't get from other guys, but that doesn't mean I want to sleep with all my friends who are girls. They're just people, and I'm grateful to have a good amount of friends that I trust, no matter what gender they are. Anyway, I take my best friends out to parties often, and last weekend I invited a couple of my close female friends to a party that my frat was throwing. It was the first time they were coming to my frat, so I stayed close by them and made sure they were having a good time. Everything had been going well until I saw one of my a-hole frat brothers grab and squeeze one of my best friend's butts. He came out of nowhere and just laughed like a dickhead after she pushed him off. I saw this happen from a couple of feet away and realized that I had just effing had it with my frat brothers acting like mother effing animals. I marched over to him and said, "You like squeezing other people's poop?" "Yeah?" And I grabbed his balls and crushed them in my fist. He instantly started screaming and crumpled into a ball on the floor. This was one of my frat brothers who had made fun of me for having chick friends before, so it honestly felt satisfying to see him writhing in pain on the floor. Anyway, it escalated into a huge scene. Another one of my frat brothers swung at me after seeing what I had done, and I had to knock him out. I gathered my friends before more guys could jump me, and we just got the hell out of there. I bought my friends food, and we had a long talk after that party. They made me realize that I would never fit into that environment with the values I had. I decided I'm going to go back to the house this week to collect my things, and never look back. I just wanted to feel like I was part of a community in college, but I know there must be better people to associate than a-holes like that. My girlfriend keeps listening to her ex-situationships music, but she won't listen to mine. I am a musician, a drummer and a guitar player to be specific, and even though I am not famous by any means, I am able to play in a few small bands in my city and go to several rehearsals a week. Usually I'll play a gig every week and a half or so. This is actually how I met my girlfriend of 6 months. She was at a show that I was playing in. It was a show with a bunch of different bands playing, so she was actually there to see another band, but she came to find me specifically after I played. That was something I loved about her right away. She was very confident and told me right away that she thought I was hot and wanted to buy me a drink. I know that kind of hottest girl in the bar tropes usually only show up in the movies, but that was her to a T. After we had been dating exclusively for a while and got to know each other better, I found out that when we met she was seeing another guy. They weren't dating but were definitely seeing each other, and she will refer to him as her situationship. And honestly I can probably guess what that means, so I didn't really want to know. When she told me I kept my cool, but I was seething inside. I hated the idea of her with another guy, so I told her, "Baby, don't mention him again, okay? I just hate hearing about it." She just laughed and said he was an a-hole anyway, and when she met me she stopped calling him and never looked back. This story made me feel great about us the first few times because she chose me over him, but over time I learned that she met him at a bar show too, and that she even still listened to his music. I saw this one day when she was looking at Spotify on her phone, and I saw that she was listening to his music. I follow her, so I went to look, and she has his music in a bunch of her current playlists too. I thought this was so weird, so I asked her about it when she started playing his music on the speaker in her apartment. And she would even keep saying how amazing the writing was or how pretty the music sounded. I didn't want her to think I was being jealous or clingy, so I was just like, "Hey baby, is this the song by that guy you used to know?" She looked at me a little weird, and I could tell right away she felt defensive. But she just said, "Yeah, it is." I listened to the song for a second trying to act cool. "But I thought you said he was in soul," I asked her. She said, "Yeah, he is in soul, but I still think he makes good music." Now don't get me wrong, I am always the first person to say that we should separate the art from the artist and not cancel someone's music because they're a bad person. It's just what I believe as a music lover. But to me that only really makes sense if they're a celebrity and not someone you used to who you personally know is in soul. But whatever, it wasn't that big of a deal, and she never went to any of his shows or anything or follow him on social media, so I wanted to let it go. And after a while I did. But it got me curious, and I looked through her Spotify and realized she doesn't have any of my music from any of the bands I play with in her music library. She doesn't even follow my bands on Spotify or on social media. And the more I thought about it, the more I remembered that the only time she has come to my shows is when I specifically ask her to, which has only been once or twice. Other than that, she will never come on her own. I know we haven't been dating so long, but it really seems like something that you would do for your boyfriend. If she were in a band or in some kind of performance, I would obviously go to support her. I felt so vulnerable asking about it, which was such an odd feeling, being scared to ask your girlfriend something, but I asked her, "Baby, why don't you listen to my music?" She looked a little guilty and said that she wanted to like my music, and she tried to get into it when we started dating, but it just wasn't her style. That made me a little sad and hurt my feelings, but I understand. There's lots of people I know in the music industry who are great friends but not my favorite kind of music, so it happens. But she still listens to his music, even after I talk to her about it. I just don't see how she can like his music when she knows he's not a great guy. Update. I went to watch a show today in our city. Like before, I said it was one of those kinds of shows with a few bands playing. Well, I found out about an hour before I went that my girlfriend's ex's band would be playing there. I had this little voice in my head saying that wouldn't it be weird if my girlfriend was there watching him play behind my back. I thought no way, she would never do that to me. I couldn't help looking for her in the crowd, and there she was. She was even wearing a shirt from his band's merch. My friends say I'm overreacting, but that's just so weird to me. It's not cheating, but it almost feels like it.
If aliens came to Earth and said, "Take me to your leader," who should we take them to? The one and only Sir David Attenborough. Surely this is the most correct answer. Just some random cow. As a prank, Steve, a friend of mine, always has useful connections, entertaining banter, and a wicked drink recipe. He just completed a 2,000-piece jigsaw. My preferred leader is Steve, Snoop Dogg. After 20 minutes the aliens will be full of peace, love, and Cool Ranch.
When did you realize that your friend was taking advantage of you financially? Breaking the cycle, learning to set boundaries with toxic friendships. I had a tight bond with my friend during college, and we stayed together after graduation. When she got her first job, she moved into my place. But there was one major issue: she was always broke because of her partying habits. I didn't mind helping out a friend in need, so I would give her money when she asked, whether it was $50 or $100. This became a regular thing, and the debt started to pile up over time. After 6 months of living together, I forgave her unpaid rent, which amounted to $800, but nothing changed. By the end of a year, she owed me $1,000, and that's when I made it clear that if she didn't pay off the debt by the end of the month, our friendship would be done for good. But then life threw me a curveball. My car broke down unexpectedly and needed repairs costing around $2,000. It sucked having no money left, especially since all my savings went into moving into a bigger apartment for us. She had moved out 2 weeks prior. To make matters worse, she offered to give me money from her savings account without discussing how much or any alternatives like cheaper repairs or delayed repayment plans. Against my better judgment, I accepted it, but instead of letting her know that I had enough money for repairs already, this became an opportunity to teach her an important lesson about friendship. True friends don't take advantage of each other just because they can. So instead of repaying what she owed me in rent right away, or giving back any surplus funds after fixing up my car, or even ensuring we both had spending cash while waiting on our upcoming direct deposits, I decided to enjoy life without constantly considering what's best for her. Every night was spent reuniting with old friends who hadn't seen since moving in with her, treating myself to new clothes and shoes, indulging in expensive dates, buying groceries only for myself. You get the point. Whenever she asked questions about where all this extra cash came from or why there wasn't anything left over after fixing up my car, all I did was smile and let those questions linger in air until they evaporated away on their own accord. It wasn't about getting revenge on someone who'd been nothing but kind and supportive towards me. Rather, it was about recognizing my worth as well as refusing to be taken advantage by toxic friendships anymore. Though our paths eventually diverged, this experience taught me how important setting boundaries are when it comes maintaining balance within relationships, while also empowering me prioritize my needs first before anyone else's. What celebrities are souls in real life? When I was 16, I won a national award, and was treated to lunch with President Obama. Barack Obama is always shown on TV as this super nice, super personable guy, but that is not the case. The entire time I ate with him, he seemed very unimpressed and like he did not want to be there with me. He was my idol, and when I told him how much I respected and looked up to him, he seemed annoyed and told me he hates when people suck up to him like that. I asked him a bunch of questions about being the president, all of which he answered with one word or, in some cases, a short grunt. When we were done with the lunch, I stood up and thanked him and went to shake his hand, but he just said "see ya" and left me hanging. Completely different from the image of him in the media. What did your job want you to hide from customers? I was a server at my first restaurant a few years ago. You got shit for calling in sick, even if you were legit sick. If you were sick, they would tell you to go to the bathroom and do what's needed, but get back to work ASAP. If you went to the bathroom too often, sneezed, coughed, or did anything sick people do in front of customers, you got scolded. Everyone effing hated that manager. I tried calling in one time because I was struggling to survive. I was puking and shitting every 30 minutes. They were so pissed off because no one could cover my shift and said if I went home I would regret it. When I started work, I looked and felt like death. The first table I went to was a party. This lady said, "You don't look good, you need to go home," and when I responded with "I'm okay. No one can cover my shift and I need this job," she got up and told me to follow her. As we were walking, she asked why I felt like I was going to get in trouble. She flipped her shit when I told her and walked straight to the manager like she was on a effing mission and said, "I am a director of human resources at Herpotup. I can't believe you would let him work like this," and then threaten him when he wanted to go home sick. "I am going to contact corporate tomorrow for treating your staff in such an inhumane way and for putting your customers' health at risk." When he tried to respond, he was bombarded so hard by this red-hot ball of fiery Bostonian rage, I started having Vietnam flashbacks. It was so effing brutal, I actually felt bad for him. She told me to go home immediately. She even offered to buy me an Uber home, and promised me there would be no repercussions in any way, shape or form. I'm 6 feet 0 inches and at the time was pretty big, but I was honestly so terrified of this 5'0" woman. I said yes ma'am and walked right out the door without clocking out. This was in front of staff and customers. The silence was palpable and I was in the limelight. I could feel the eyes staring me down as I walked away, nearly shitting my pants from fear and my stomach hurting. I showed up to work a few days later and felt like a effing rockstar because my coworkers had the biggest shit-eating grins on their faces giving me a thumbs up. As I was walking to the back to clock in, I was stopped by this professional as F lady in a nice woman suit. She sat me down and explained that she was from HR. Basically, I was told to never fear for my employment if I needed to call in sick again and to take one more paid day off to fully recover. I was like F yeah. While I was walking out a coworker stopped me and said dude, F face hasn't been back to work since that night you went home. I'm pretty sure he got fired. I didn't see him again until recently when he was my server at a diner I was eating at. The look on his face was priceless. He went from being a manager at a very successful, high-end pub to being my server at the equivalent to a Denny's. I took my sewer slide all student in to live with me. I had a student, male, freshman, 15, who was a great student. He got put into my remedial class mid-semester. Basically he'd been a troubled student in another class and he'd shown up to that class only a few weeks before because he'd previously been at another school. That's a minor red flag. But, in my class, great student. His biggest issues were that he was intelligent and the class really was below his level. Boredom often leads to poor behavior choices. Additionally, his home life was basically in the crapper. Without going into all the details, let's just say it was pretty bad. I brought a lot of this up with the school counselor. She did some digging, as much as she could, and confirmed a lot of it. But with an entire student body population, she didn't have much else she could do since he wasn't in, and I quote, immediate danger. I brought it up with his former teacher, whose class he'd left, and she seemed to think that he just had issues with female authority figures, again, possibly stemming from the home. That's a red flag. She suspected it had something to do with his mother or older sister, but could never get anything out of him. After he'd been my student for a while, and I'd learned all of this, things were going fairly swimmingly. Until he shows up one Friday during lunch and says that he's come to say goodbye. That's a red flag. Getting him to talk, he basically says that he's hit a breaking point at home and he's going to run away. He's got a girlfriend that he can probably convince to let him sleep over for a few nights while he gets things together, but that won't last long and his mother will quickly find him there. His plan from there is basically to be homeless or to attempt sewer slide, which he rationalizes will either end the BS or at least get him a decent bed and a few meals at a hospital. I go through a bunch of mental checklists. I asked him to reconsider a few times. Eventually get him around to trying to reconcile with his mother for the sake of his younger brother and ask him if just having a few days away from home might help. Reluctantly, he agrees. So, after school I took him home with me. He slept on the couch, did chores around the house and in the yard. Was respectful to me and my wife, and my own kid. We got him to call home on Friday, ended in a shouting match over the phone, and again on Sunday morning, much less shouting, but still some there. Told him that he'd need to go home on Sunday night, try to talk to mom face to face, gave him some de-escalation tips, and drove him home. He was at school Monday, and seemed fine. However, he still seemed agitated. His mom later wound up calling me, repeatedly, accusing me of touching her son and grooming him and shouting and ranting. I told her that if she felt so strongly about it that she could go to the authorities, but that I had weeks of documentation about his condition in addition to his own testimony. That I had the best interests of one of my students at the forefront and if she had an interest in his health and future well-being, that she might want to re-examine her own relationship with her sons.
People married to hardcore gamers, when did their addiction go too far? I found my autistic 3-year-old son on a busy highway while my husband was supposed to be watching him. When I confronted him, all hell broke loose. Mark and I first bonded over our shared enjoyment of gaming when we started dating. At the time, we'd simply play for an hour or two as a fun hobby to unwind on weekends when we were both free. It never interfered with other parts of our lives. After marriage and kids, we'd still squeeze in the occasional gaming session together after the kids were in bed to try maintaining that connection. But after COVID hit and my work as a nurse became more demanding, Mark's recreational gaming rapidly spiraled into a dangerous addiction. Once I became an essential frontline worker during the pandemic, forced to take on extra shifts to help our understaffed hospital, Mark was left responsible for childcare most days. Unfortunately, his priority quickly shifted to not the kids, but rather having uninterrupted hours to game while I worked to support us. I first noticed small red flags years back, like Mark forgetting to pick up our daughter from daycare until I received panicked calls as fees racked up. At the time, he apologized profusely and I forgave the isolated mistake. But over years, lapses became a pattern until they were nearly daily occurrences. Once I returned from my exhaustive shifts, I'd find both our 7-year-old daughter and 3-year-old nonverbal son neglected, hungry and unattended, with Mark gaming for hours oblivious to their needs. I can't even count the number of times I've desperately cut the Wi-Fi to our house to try curbing his addiction, or outright canceled our internet service entirely. But he always finds new ways to get back online, even resorting to using his phone plan data to play after I block the home network. When I plead with him to just take a short break from gaming to care for our kids, he brushes me off saying they're fine and don't need constant supervision. But our daughter's missed talent show and declining grades are glaring proof otherwise. Just last week, Our 3-year-old managed to unlock and open the front door and wander outside totally naked while Mark sat in the bedroom lost in his gaming, unaware our toddler had escaped and was nowhere to be found.
I counted down the minutes until I could fly back to school and try to forget that night. Weeks later, Liz called me insisting we talk. She dropped the bombshell that she was pregnant from our indiscretion. We agonized over what to do. Ultimately, we decided she would claim it was Ethan's child and we'd forever bury the secret. When Liz's due date approached, I concocted an excuse to visit home so I could be there for the birth. Holding my illicit baby niece brought such complex emotions. But Liz and I plastered on smiles, celebrating with Ethan's oblivious family. Back at college, I spiraled into depression and alcohol abuse, failing my classes. I couldn't bear to face what I'd done. Liz and I speak rarely now, only about necessities regarding the baby. The lifelong trust between us is shattered. I'm trying to pull my life back together, but the shame still eats away at me. Every day I wish I could turn back time and undo that reckless drunken choice. I robbed Liz of the uncomplicated joy of raising her first child. And forever changed the course of our relationship. Some secrets you carry to your grave. I know Liz and I will take this one to ours, for the sake of her family. But the guilt is slowly crushing my spirit. I've considered confessing to Ethan many times. But I know it would only ease my conscience, while destroying lives. As I watch my baby niece grow up from a distance, I'm reminded of the mistakes that shaped her very existence. Had I known one impulsive act in a drunken stupor would haunt me indefinitely, I never would have laid a hand on my own sister. The remorse and self-loathing now consume my life. Perhaps one day I'll make peace with myself. But I doubt the pain will ever fully fade.
My narcissistic ex-boyfriend intimacy trafficked me and I want to press charges after discovering something even more disturbing 10 years later. I met my ex online when I was 19. When we began dating, I was shunned from the small Pentecostal church I grew up in my entire life. So naturally, as a 19-year-old I clung to him because everyone I was allowed to know had cut me out of their life. Why did they cut me off? Well, they believed I was unequally yoked with a non-believer because I was dating a black man with long hair who listened to AC/DC. I thought they were judgmental and I was drawn to the outcasts because I felt I understood them. My relationship with him was great for the first 2 years. I was incredibly inexperienced in his eyes sexually, and he made me feel inadequate. The dynamic of our relationship was that he was 6 years older, knew much more about life than I did, and that I should listen to his advice on things because he knew better than I did. Around the 2-year mark of being together, I noticed he stopped going to bed with me. He was staying up late and doing things on his computer. I later found out he was sending explicit photos to other women and getting them in return. When I confronted him, he simply said, "Well, are you leaving me?" And I was heartbroken, felt I only had him, so I stayed. He explained that he felt he had met the right person at the wrong time, explaining he felt I was his person but he didn't get to show his wild oats, so to speak. I was devastated because essentially he told me he wanted to F other people. That's when he pressured me into the swinging lifestyle. It started out with meeting other couples. He arranged everything, he dressed me and took photos of me. He spoke as me to these other people in order to get play dates. When the play dates would happen he couldn't get a stiffy, and then he blamed me for his insecurities. I felt almost mind-effed into doing whatever I could to make him happy/satisfied. You might ask me why I didn't just leave. Well, he convinced me my friends and family didn't love me or support my decisions in life. He was an elaborate thinker, he had a reason for everything. He knew how to play on my emotions knowing I cared for him. He spun everything in a way to make me feel he was caring for me and wanted to see me in the third person. I was treated as his property or prized possession. He began controlling how I dressed, and started setting up dates with men I didn't know, requesting that I take videos and pictures to share with him later on. I've always been a one-man type of girl. This was so out of my element and I didn't feel safe. I didn't feel I could speak up or he would believe I didn't trust him. I began going on these arranged play dates with men to make him happy. Each time nearly having a panic attack, not knowing the situation I was walking into. One time coming back from a play date, the man had claimed he recorded our session for me but recorded the wall instead. That was the first time he physically laid hands on me. I learned the coping mechanism of disassociation very quickly. I entered survival mode and made myself into someone else to make him happy, and when I was at home I was me. Until one evening where he told me he arranged a playdate for me, while simultaneously he quit his job. I was confused. Why would you just quit your job without discussing with me first? I went on this playdate and met a man I would have never touched with a 10-foot pole, who was offering me $200 to have intimacy with me. I was stunned/horrified/ and felt like I was living in a dream. He had quit his job, and when I confronted him on arranging a paid exchange for intimacy with a man who I would have never touched, his response was it was my turn to provide for us. Rent was due in 2 weeks and we had $30 in our bank account. I felt I had no choice. This went on for 5 months. He put me in clothes, took photos of me in any position you could think of, put them on websites with an alias name and a text app to text clients. I never was allowed to keep the money, have a say in who I saw, and at the end of every weekend he would thank me by a nice dinner and keep the rest of the money to fix up his busted 1974 Ferrari. Afterwards I would lay in bed and just cry myself to sleep. I told him so many times I wasn't happy doing this, but he told me we needed to pay our bills. He was intimidating, demeaning, and a shell of the man I thought I loved. My last client I ever had was law enforcement. They knew about him because he would stay in the lobby while I met clients. They separated me from him and asked me to tell them what my partner was making me do. I lied to them and told them I was compliant and a willing party because I was taught not to be a snitch or trust law enforcement. I got a misdemeanor charge for PR stitution. I left him 2 weeks later while he was at his new serving job, packed all my stuff and went back home. This was 2014. Since then I've gotten married and had 2 children. But I recently discovered videos of me that he uploaded on adult film sites that have been there since 2014. One of them shows my face in it with over 500,000 hits. This was in the state of Virginia. The video of my face on this adult film site was a private video with my ex and I. I need it to be removed. I have a career and I have 3 brothers and have a husband and children who never need to learn about this. He's now married in a different state but has me blocked on all accounts, but I have access to his wife's page.
My mother-in-law ruined my wedding. To share the full story, my husband and I met at university 5 years ago. His mother was wonderful to me, respectful, and understood boundaries. We got engaged a year and a half ago. We decided to have a kind of destination wedding to where we went to college. It's a kind of small town, but my friend from university has a large estate there with orchards and houses. We decided to marry there. So my husband and I arrived Wednesday night to stay at a house on the estate. I put my dress bag in the master bedroom closet. Thursday evening my mother-in-law, father-in-law, husband's siblings and their significant others arrived into town and came out to see us at the estate house. I showed mother-in-law and my sisters-in-law my dress. Mother-in-law and father-in-law thought they were staying at the estate. Not with us, but at another house on the property. This was the first time anything like this happened, and even though I thought I had made it clear they needed to secure their own lodging, I figured it was an innocent mistake. When we got the estate we contacted the nicest hotel in town to get a block of rooms. We told everyone at the same time during a family meal. I provided contact info for the hotel and mother-in-law asked me about everyone staying at the estate. I told her that space was limited at the estate and left it at that. I realized that I should have specifically told her that she needed to get a room in town. But she also knew that my bridal party was staying with me Friday night so we could get ready there Saturday morning. So when they arrived Thursday, my husband's siblings and spouses had booked hotel rooms and mother-in-law and father-in-law thought they were staying on the estate. My husband explained that wasn't the case. They were shocked, so we decided to give them the house for the night and crashed with my friend whose family owns the estate. We did this because the hotel was fully booked and as late as it was. We just wanted to take the easy way out. Well, Thursday mother-in-law refused to go to a hotel because she didn't want to be somewhere without other guests. We ended up finding them a bigger, corner room at the second nicest hotel in town where there were other guests staying and we paid for it. I thought everything was fine. Friday we had the rehearsal and after the girls and I hung out, had a few drinks, and watched movies. Yesterday morning my mother woke me up at 8:30 and was in tears. She has gone to get my dress to let it air out and it had been cut into strips. It was cut in 4 sections, from top to bottom, and my veil had been ripped nearly in half. The only people that could have done this were my husband, my mother-in-law, my father-in-law, or my bridal party. So I called my husband and all I could say was, "Your mother cut up my dress," before handing the phone off to my mom. Fortunately I composed myself enough to talk to him a bit and allow a few people to go into town to try and find a replacement dress. I tried really hard to keep positive. My husband called his mother and asked why she ruined my dress as she hung up on him. Then he called his sister and told her what happened. She swore her mother couldn't have done that, but when asked by my husband, couldn't suggest another culprit. They decided to confront their mother together. Since a lot of people had a problem with it on my original post, I told my husband not to come to the estate house. We had planned a special first look and I didn't want to let my mother-in-law ruin that as well. So the outcome of all of this is that my husband told his mother she was not allowed at the wedding. She proceeded to lose her mind. Apparently this was alarming for the family since this was entirely out of character for her. However, no one tried to force my husband to change his mind, which made me feel better about continuing with having the wedding. Just in case, we asked a few trusted friends to keep an eye out for her and father-in-law during our celebration, but they didn't attempt to come. Father-in-law also said that they would pay for the ruined dress and the replacement dress purchased yesterday. There were plenty of people asking where my mother-in-law and father-in-law were, but my husband and his siblings handled it by saying she wasn't feeling like herself and that sufficed. This morning father-in-law called, congratulated us, and apologized for mother-in-law's actions. She's wanting to apologize but I've refused to speak to her. I need to calm down and just relax. My husband and I are at the airport waiting for our flight to go on our honeymoon, so I hope the next week is enough time to get myself together. Some of you suggested a doctor's exam for my mother-in-law. It's not needed. We found out this morning she has a brain tumor. She and father-in-law were keeping it from the family as to not take away from our celebration. They were going to tell us and the rest of the family when we got back from our honeymoon. This is why father-in-law was so quick to apologize and offer to cover costs while he wasn't aware of what had happened. He knew mother-in-law was displaying some odd behavior in the last week. Without giving out too much information, mother-in-law most likely cut my dress because she thought she was working on it. Given the way it was cut, this makes sense. I still have not spoken to her, but she did send me a lengthy email apologizing for her actions, admitting she did this despite not fully remembering, and telling me she understands if I never speak to her again. She did not ask me to forgive and forget or to apologize for how I feel and not what she did. I never in a million years would have thought she could have done this, but process of elimination ended with only her. Also, to better explain a few things about her and father-in-law staying Wednesday night. Mother-in-law did not show out that evening. She seemed completely confused and thought they were staying at one of the houses on the estate. Now knowing about the tumor, This explains her confusion that night and strange behavior/attitude Thursday and Saturday mornings. My husband and I decided to go ahead with our plans at both mother-in-law and father-in-law's request. Both husband and I wanted to go back home immediately, but father-in-law said there's nothing we can do about the situation, so we should just try to enjoy ourselves and worry about the rest when we return. I feel terrible about this and I seriously hope she'll make a full recovery. Also, for those that felt I should be out for blood, I won't lie, I wanted her dead at several points on Saturday morning. But she was absolutely wonderful to me the entire time I've known her. We even lived with her and father-in-law for an entire summer while our house was being finished, and she never once crossed a boundary or was anything but kind and loving. But I do want to make it clear that if she wasn't going through this medical issue, I would never have seen her again. Nor would she ever see any children we might have. Oh. Another common question was why father-in-law stayed with her and missed the wedding. At the time he told my husband he felt mother-in-law needed to be watched, and my husband thought he meant mother-in-law might act out again. We now know father-in-law was worried mother-in-law might have another episode and could get hurt or hurt someone else. I worked as a poor slave for the first 10 years of my life, but then I was rescued and now I work on saving others like me. When my mother was a child, a slave owner knocked on her door and asked my grandfather if he could buy her. My grandfather used to see my mom as a financial burden, and sold her into slavery for pocket change. Her life was never the same after that, as she had to work in villages from 3 a.m. until 11 p.m. She got pregnant with me by a man she hardly knew and was moved to work under a slave master. By the time I learned to walk, I was trained and put to work. My job was to work on Lake Ulta, the largest man-made lake, scuba diving every day in the dirtiest of waters, working on ships, and serving under an overseer. Whenever I failed at any of these tasks, I was beaten and denied food. My mother never spoke out of turn, and our master would beat her whenever she went out of her way to provide for me. I slept every night paralyzed in fear without shelter. I laid on dry grass with no protection from the wind or the cold, paranoid, wondering if I was going to be eaten by the lurking wild animals. Watching the punishments and sacrifices my mother made pushed me to keep working hard, because it meant we were providing ourselves with the minimum rations required to sustain life. What I didn't know at the time was that I had been conditioned to think that the child labor I did was normal, necessary even, and the cruel treatments I got was all there was to life. It was only when I saw other kids much younger than I being treated terribly that I realized this was not normal. Many of my friends were malnourished, they contracted malaria, and worst of all, many of them never got to grow old with me. I watched them pass over with my very own eyes. As I watched the other kids around me draw their last breaths, I constantly wondered when it would be my turn. Every day was a constant battle of trying not to sink and drown in muddy water. When I was 10 years old, the entire course of my life changed. My mother, in search of a better future for her and I, gave me away to agents. I was taken in by the Rescue Foundation Many Hopes. I was taken to their recovery center, and for the first time in my entire life I was given food, water and adequate sleep without having to worry if it'd be taken away from me. I had clothes to put on my back, and I couldn't understand the generosity of the people doing this for me. I never asked for anything, and they continuously kept providing me with everything I'd ever need to actually live. They took me back to my actual hometown, and I was finally allowed to live with my grandmother. My mother later joined us and made peace with my grandma. I was granted the opportunity to a completely free education paid by Many Hopes. I was happy to learn, but I had so much catching up to do. I didn't even know how to hold a pencil. I was a slave all my life, and this was my first time learning anything that wasn't ships. I regularly thought about the other kids at the lake and how many of them wouldn't have a home to go to even if freed. I thought about other people like my mother, who lost their childhood and worked all their life. Many Hopes granted me a way out, but my only job now was to work harder than everyone else in my class. I needed to do it for my mother, who slaved her life away, helping me get set up, and for my grandmother, who took me in. All of my continuous hard work paid off, and I was awarded the highest honors of admission to university, all semesters and supplies paid for by Many Hopes. It didn't mean my struggle stopped there. Working in school through all the traumas Lake Ulta gave me was one of the biggest challenges I faced. I had many sleepless nights, and this affected me in school at times. Physically I was free, but my mind wanted to take me back to the lake. I tried to forget everything about the endless murky lake, all the kids that were beaten and starved, but I had to keep moving forward. I had to break the cycle of desperation in Ghana and show that no human has a price. After graduating from university with a business degree, I was granted an incredible job working for marketing campaigns. I flew on private planes for companies like Shell Oil and Tiffany's. I did everything everyone around me thought I would never do. I worked from literal rags to riches. However, there was a gap inside me that I still couldn't fill. Though I achieved freedom, the fact is there are still kids hauling ships, moving nets, being beaten every breathing moment. I couldn't leisurely work at my job knowing I still had brothers and sisters left behind that needed a chance to be saved. I made the bold decision to quit my career and went back to Ghana and worked at the Many Hopes and Challenging Heights Rescue Center, the same exact one that saved me. When I returned to my home village of Winneba, I was greeted by the children, hugged and paraded by all of them. I knew I had the knowledge and expertise to show the kids in Ghana that they too can be like me. Right now I'm running investigations to locate kids that are trafficked, finding out where their home is and freeing them out of slavery. The trauma, scars, mental illnesses and stolen childhoods is almost unbearable to witness. I don't wish it upon anyone. Our Many Hopes facility receives donations till this day, and every cent goes a long way to ending modern slavery. It's remarkable to think there are good people in the world that care about our cause and care about saving these kids. It's so easy to live in comfort and turn a blind eye to the rest of the world, like I almost did while I was in school. But I've seen change being made from those that pay attention. I myself am a prime example of the change made by people who care.
Ada for not wanting my mom's boyfriend anywhere near my private parts. Plus update. Hey everyone, I'm really stuck in a weird and kinda gross situation right now. I'm 18F, finishing up high school and still living with my mom, 34F. So, a few months ago, my mom started dating this new guy who's 50. Okay, age gap weirdness aside, things got super awkward for me personally. About 3 months ago, my period started getting super bad. Like, talking unusually heavy bleeding and major cramps and just a lot of pain that I've never dealt with before. Obviously, I was like, okay, time to see a gynecologist, because I haven't been to one since I was 15 and this isn't something to mess around with. Also, it's time to get a routine pelvic exam anyway. I told my mom, thinking she'd be supportive and help me make an appointment. We live in a pretty remote rural area right now. My high school has literally like 50 students, and it's like an hour drive to the nearest urgent care even. Also, the insurance I'm on sucks and I need her to help me with a copay. But nope. The next day, she's like, guess what? My boyfriend can do your checkup. Yeah, turns out he used to be a board-certified gynecologist, but got his license yanked away a few years back. And why does she want him to do it? To save money on the copay since our insurance kinda sucks, and to avoid driving 2 hours to see a doctor in town. Now, let me be clear, this guy gives me the major creeps. He's done stuff like not knocking before entering my room, making weird jokes that are definitely not okay, and just giving me those vibes that scream, stay away. So, the thought of him being all up in my business for a pelvic exam, hell no. When I said as much to my mom, explaining there's no way I'm letting her boyfriend anywhere near me like that, she lost it. She said I was being insulting, assuming the worst about her BF, and that I had hurt his feelings by suggesting he couldn't be trusted. She said I was essentially implying he's a pervert. It ended with her saying I was grounded for even thinking he was some sort of creep. So, here I am, feeling stuck and kinda violated by the mere suggestion, and punished on top of that. Am I the asshole for standing my ground and not wanting her boyfriend to do the exam? Update. So I get home from school today, and my mom is waiting in the living room for me, sobbing. Her boyfriend, the creep, is standing right there next to her. For background, for the past 2 years she's been a really religious, born-again Christian type. No boys, curfew, the whole 9 yards. I've never had intimacy or had a boyfriend. So in between sobs she tells me the creep talked to her today, and told her that based on my symptoms, heavy bleeding and period cramps, and my disrespectful behavior, he's sure that it's from having intimacy. Not even an STD, but from having intercourse that was so intense it injured my insides. I've literally never heard of this and I looked it up later and it's not even a effing thing. Meanwhile the creep is sitting there mostly silent, nodding along with what my mom is saying. I tried to get a word in but that's when the creep started on me, telling me don't even bother denying it. I've been a gynecologist for over a decade, I know this when I see it yada yada yada. My mom then starts yelling at me like how could you do this to me and so on and so forth. She's convinced I've been going out and having intimacy with boys from school when I've literally just been seeing the 2 or 3 friends I have. So then they explain that they decided to gather some consequences for what I allegedly did, that I'm grounded, they're going to switch out my iPhone for a dumb phone so I can't use social media, I'm not allowed out to see my friends, and, this is the effing crazy bit, the creep is going to perform a weekly purity test invasive exam to make sure that I'm not actively having intimacy until they can trust me again. And the first one is gonna be this weekend. I'm totally lost here. Obviously I'm not going through with this, but I have no money at all and nowhere I can stay even for one night. I'm leaning on making up some excuse to avoid the purity thing and keep my smartphone until I can sort something out. Any other ideas are appreciated.
What person was so incredible that you couldn't take your eyes off them? This would prove to be one of the most difficult moral tests I've endured. I failed. It was the mid-80s, I was in Vancouver for my cousin's wedding. The night of the wedding, at a party at her parents' house, all us young people sat up on the roof drinking wine and champagne, laughing, enjoying the city view and getting very drunk. A sweet moment to recall. There I met Sandra. She was petite, cute as hell, smart, and keen for my kind of fun. We had several fabulous days together before I returned home to Toronto and to work. I had assumed we were done, but she started calling and writing letters. She said she was in love with me, but I was cagey about such things and hadn't reciprocated. I liked her quite a bit, but was not about to move to British Columbia to be with her, nor was she going to bail out of university to come be with me. So we engaged in a fun, intimate back and forth over the next few months. One day she called to say her best friend Amanda was coming to Toronto to attend a medical conference, and she asked if I would take her out for a drink. I arranged to meet Amanda in a pub near my place. I had no idea what she looked like, but was told by Sandra that she'd seen a picture of me and would find me if I sat at the bar at the appointed time. I sat, lost in thought, gazing at the bar's TV set, halfway through a Guinness, when a female voice from behind asked, "Are you Paul?" I swiveled around on the bar stool to say hello. What I saw momentarily removed from me the ability to conduct myself in the manner I'd long been accustomed to. Instantly short of breath, possibly choking, I stumbled badly through an introduction. She, conversely, was a portrait of poise, elegance, confidence and a clean, immense beauty of an order I'd not seen in the flesh before. It took me by force. Her skin. It was the beginning of my demise. The only way to describe it was that she appeared to have been carved by ancient masters from a 5-ton pillar of solid alabaster. Her hair was white blonde, ultra-fine and free of goop, in a short pixie cut that offset her looks about 200% too well. Her face had gentle, yet slightly sharpened features, and eyes of bright aquamarine. She held her resting face in a curious and amused expression, as if you just said something very funny but right at the ragged edge of appropriateness and she found you intriguing but was not going to show more than one hint of interest for the moment. Of course, I'd said nothing of the sort. Coughing, sputtering nonsense and beginning to sweat, I organized a table for two. She wore a stylishly tailored light turquoise raincoat with a belt tied around the waist, like a secret agent from the 40s. I found the wherewithal to help her remove it. As we moved about, I noted an athletic physique with no conceivable room for improvement. Legs like a tennis pro's poking out of her smart miniskirt. She was wearing a white polished cotton blouse that moved so divinely. Women still did this in the 1980s. She carried it all with such a simple, natural demeanor. When she smiled her shy smile, perfect white teeth were framed in by two dimples in her cheeks. Dimples? Jesus, you had to have those, too? I screamed inside. I sensed my doom collecting around me like a malevolent cloud of static electricity. I found my feet and, fortunately, my sense of humor. Soon I had her laughing at my own steady stream of self-deprecating stories and jokes. But I let her do much of the talking, because I was experiencing continuous difficulty thinking straight while in her vicinity. She gave off an energy of purity, and a composure that seemed criminally beyond her years. As attractive to me as it was intimidating. I saw she was miles out of my, and most men's, leagues, but no one had told her. Or if they had, it hadn't ruined her yet. By 10 p.m., some 3 hours later, I had fallen fully. My life could now only become a hopeless disaster. A dread consumed me. I felt like an idiot put in charge of a nuclear plant. Amanda had a fiancé back in Victoria, with her whole life ahead already mapped out. I had Sandra, her very best and oldest friend, who loved me, waiting in the wings. The trusting girl who innocently assumed I'd be a gentlemanly host to her friend. Which I had been so far. Amanda announced around 11 p.m. that she had an early morning flight home, but also that she'd be returning for a work thing in a few weeks and would love to get together again. I called her a cab. Before it arrived I did the thing I'd tried not to do the entire night. I put my hands ever so softly on her shoulders and told her that I did not know what to do. That my situation was hopeless. That I wanted her more than anyone or anything I'd ever encountered. That I felt horrible. That I didn't want to hurt Sandra. But the truth was the truth, and this was my terrible truth. She reacted calmly and decently, reminding me she was engaged, loved the man and that was that. She then got in the cab and left. No hugs or kisses. Just a hand on my arm and a good night, Paul, as she stepped away. I would not ever see or hear from Amanda again. Nor Sandra. Except for the chilling phone call from Sandra, some days later. I asked her if everything was okay. She asked back what I'd said to her best friend. I asked why she was asking. Because all she said about her night out with you was, he's going to break your heart.
Am I the asshole for not telling my parents I was making more money than their golden child? For a bit of background, I've always been a disappointment in my family and my older and younger sister were the favorites, especially my older sister, and this was mostly because of grades and subject choices and eventually career. My sister took all the good subjects, think physics and such, and I did not. After high school I didn't have the grade for the fancy university in my country and my parents didn't want to pay for me to go study animation like I wanted. In their eyes it not a good job. I tried to convince them but they didn't change their minds, so I took a year of the work and moved out of my parents' house. The next year I applied for a 1-year course in IT engineering. After I finished the course I applied to a lot of jobs, even the ones I did not qualify for, and was lucky enough to get a job that paid well, and they were even kind enough to teach me more things as I worked. And since I had no family to spend time with and most of my friends from HS were too far/busy to hang with me, I spent most my extra time working, which paid up because I got a lot of promotion, and now I make about $225K a year. My oldest sister went to university to study engineering and got a job as an engineer, but eventually said she wanted to study and then do law, and has been working as a lawyer, and from what I hear she is making about 150-180K a year, and she was being treated and the golden child. My parents don't know how much I make. My younger sister is in university studying biology, and my parents said they wouldn't pay for her unless she becomes a real doctor, and she has been studying with a scholarship and has been working for extra cash because my parents don't give her any money, which has made me and her closer because she was now being treated the same way as me, and I have been sending her $7K every month so she can focus on her studies. Now about 2 weeks ago was my mother's birthday and she invited me, much to my surprise. I thought someone was dying or someone need a kidney and didn't want to go, but my girlfriend said I should go. When I got there it was nothing but complaining and talking about how much of a success my older sister was. I was determined not to fight and took everything on the chin, but eventually then started doing the same to my younger sister, and she chose the opposite, and basically called me out on their favoritism and told them I was making double what my older sister makes and that I had been sending her money every month for the past 2 years, and all this happened in front of the whole family. And all their friends. After all this I left with my younger sister and started to get phone calls from my parents yelling at me for not telling them how much I made and for not sending them money instead of my useless sister, and calling me an a-hole for not doing so. So am I
told my mean girl daughter to stay TF away from my family. I have a daughter, 19, and 2 sons, 16 and 12. My daughter Sydney is, when we're one-on-one, a great kid. She's bright, she's funny, she sets goals and works hard to meet them. I love her very much, and have done my best to support her. She currently attends college about an hour from our home, which my spouse and I pay for, along with her housing and everything. However, Sydney is just awful to her 16-year-old brother, Lucas, and pretty much always has been. She picks on him constantly, calls him stupid, belittles his accomplishments, and is just generally mean. We've tried to improve this behavior many times over the years. We've done individual counseling for her, individual counseling for Lucas, family counseling with all of us. We tried finding them activities to do together. We've tried any consequence/incentive we could think of, and finally we just tried to keep them separate as much as possible. For his part, Lucas spent his younger years thinking Sydney was the coolest person ever and tried so hard to play with her and be nice to her. I'm not saying he never started any of the conflict, but it wasn't nearly the same level of random meanness as from his sister. He also responded to consequences and his behavior generally improved over time. He's also a great kid, has lots of friends, does well in school, and is researching colleges now. For the last few years he mostly just tried to avoid Sydney, which got easier as they both had their own activities. We had hoped that through all our efforts and the process of growing up, Sydney would at least learn to ignore her brother rather than lashing out. She's very capable of being nice to others. She has her own circle of friends, she gets along well with our 12-year-old, and never really got in trouble at school. I know that I'm not seeing her 24/7, but I really think this is isolated to her relationship with Lucas. When she came home from college for Thanksgiving, everything started up again. She immediately started teasing Lucas about his clothes, told him he'd never get into a good college, and generally took every opportunity to pick a fight. It was exhausting. Now, she's planning on coming home for 2 weeks at Christmas. She lives in an apartment and doesn't have to come home like she did when she lived in the dorms. I told her that if she can't be kind to, or failing that at least ignore, her brother then she can't come home. I think she thought I was joking at first and kind of laughed and said something about not being able to promise that, and I said that's fine, don't come home then. I've made it clear she's welcome anytime she can act civilly with her family, and I'm not threatening to cut her off financially in any way. We made a promise, I intend on keeping it. Now that she's an adult with her own living space, I don't think Lucas should have to deal with her anymore, and he's still living under our roof. Sydney is very angry with me and says she's never coming home again, and my wife thinks I'm being too harsh, and that maybe we should have just told her she couldn't stay as long so Lucas can still enjoy his break. So, Ada for telling my daughter not to come home? I feel like I might be because it's also her home, but she still has housing available so maybe not. Am I wrong to stay with my cheating husband for financial security? My 42M husband 38M has cheated multiple times throughout our 12-year marriage. This last one was a doozy and really broke me. He wants to stay married and raise our kids together. Doesn't want a divorce. But wants to be able to hook up occasionally with the promise that he won't let anything go beyond a casual hookup, and it's a promise he's broken multiple times and says I can do the same. I don't feel like he truly loves me. If he did he wouldn't do the things he's done, but we're not fighting and there isn't a lot of tension anymore because I'm basically just numb to it all now. If I stay in the marriage my future is finally secure. Like really secure. We have a good life. Multiple homes. Nice cars. Private schools for the kids. Nothing to worry about financially for me, our kids, my parents, etc. If I leave, I will be okay financially but not anywhere close to the same and not able to provide the same level of support for my kids. I will definitely have to work years longer before retiring, and I do worry about taking care of my parents as they're getting older and they have little savings. But I would have a chance at finding true love. Am I wrong to stay? Am I the jerk for kicking out my husband's aunt after she criticized how I treated my cat in relation to my baby? Hey everyone, I find myself in need of some judgment since my family is divided and I still think I'm not the I'm looking for your honest opinions to help me assess if I was in the wrong here. I'm a woman in my late 20s, and I recently became a mother. I have been absolutely loving every aspect of motherhood. Alongside my newfound role as a mom, I have a cherished cat whom I have always shared a deep bond with. Even after the arrival of my baby, I have made it a point to continue involving my cat in our family life. We still go on little walks together around the garden, just the two of us, and I make sure to spend quality time snuggling and bonding with her. I also love how much my girl loves and cares for the baby. During a visit from my husband's family, his aunt decided to share their unsolicited opinion with me. It was kinda out of the blue. My cat is shy with people, so she was in my room looking through the window. When she wants my attention she makes a particular meow. Husband told me and I went to check on her. After I came back his aunt started going on about how having a cat around my baby could potentially be dangerous and implied that I should shift my focus away from my cat. She said it was not natural and that I should just focus on the baby. A cat is a cat. I told her to get out of my house now. She was astonished and I told her it is extremely rude to go to other people's houses, and started to criticize how they live their lives, especially when we barely have a relationship. I have seen the woman 3 times in my life, one of them was the wedding. She and her sister got out. My husband told me I was right, but I was rude and I could have said that in a better way. My sister-in-law, who was present, thinks I overreacted. I told my best friend and she's with me, but she's also a cat lover, so I don't know if it counts. So Reddit, am I the jerk? My wife accused me of cheating on her with my abuser just because I finished. I got roped at a party about 8 months ago. I got drunk, and an acquaintance of mine took advantage of me. I hardly remember it, but I woke up the next morning naked with a vivid memory of what had happened. I remember putting up a fight but not much else. I also have a very, very vague memory of her holding a phone the entire time, but that's about it. It will be important later. I immediately went home and told my wife. She was extremely sympathetic and let me cry on her shoulder. I was a sobbing mess. At the time, I did not want to press charges because I didn't know how it would go if I, a male, accused a woman of roping me. Anyway, I ended up telling my friends because they questioned why I stopped showing up to gatherings. The girl's response was basically that it was consensual and I was lying to keep my wife from getting mad at me. Half of my friends believe her, and the other half are on my side. It was a mess. In the end, I decided to just distance myself from them all. One of my supportive friends contacted me letting me know that she had gotten pregnant, but ended up doing a baby garbage. This was a whirlwind of emotions for me, but in the end I decided that it was for the best. My wife took this in a different way. She says that she wasn't aware that my abuser made me finish and that I wouldn't have finished if I genuinely wasn't enjoying it. We argued for days and she kept telling me I was sick for faking a rape allegation just so I could cheat on her. We've separated but are not yet divorced. I've been staying with my brother. Well, at this point, I decided that I needed to go to the police to clear my name. I hired a lawyer, and when he heard my recount of the events that I remember, he was absolutely convinced that she had recorded the encounter. I don't know why, all I mentioned was that she was holding a phone, but I guess it makes sense. Anyway, her phone and laptop were searched but there was nothing. It took months, but finally we were able to retrieve the video via the cloud. I guess you can't really ever fully delete something. The video clearly depicted me in a vulnerable state and incoherently trying to get her off of me. It was sick. Anyway, with this evidence plus witness accounts, court sentenced her to 2.5 years in prison. When this happened, I guess my wife realized that I actually had gotten roped and has been pleading to get back into my life. She says she made a mistake and just assumed and she's so sorry, but I don't know if I can ever forgive her. Should I continue with divorce or try to work things out with her? Teachers of Reddit, what was the best excuse for being late that turned out to be true? This happened to me as a pupil. A very quiet, unassuming kid in our class came into German with about 5 minutes of the class left. We went to a Catholic school and the teachers were all quite strict and intimidating. Classes were usually silent, especially in junior school. When this boy came into class at the end of the lesson that day, the door flew inwards with such force that the teacher gave an audible gasp. It had been raining heavily outside, his hair was plastered to his forehead, his blazer was dripping and sodden, he had mud caked into his trousers up to his knees, and he was breathing heavily. The teacher exclaimed, "Brendan, what happened?" We all stared up at him in shocked silence. This quiet, unassuming little boy let out a big sigh and just said, "I took a shortcut," and went straight to his seat. That line became iconic in our school for years afterwards. My grandpa probably saved my life. A few months ago, my 16 male, mom, 33 female, got arrested for possession. Basically, she had some coke in her car, and not the drink. Her testing didn't come back clean, either. She'll be in jail for like 5 years. Because my mom obviously can't parent me anymore, I live with my grandpa, 73 male, he's so much better than my mom. When I first moved in, he made me promise never to use cigarettes or alcohol near him because he used to be addicted to both and he doesn't want to relapse. I understand, so I don't. I used to sleep on the couch because my mom had the only mattress, but now I've got my own room. It used to be my uncle's, and my grandpa let me redecorate the entire thing. New paint, new rugs, new furniture. He even bought me some posters for movies and stuff I like. I moved schools too. My grades were shite before, and I was always getting into fights because I was always angry and didn't know what to do about it. My grades still kinda suck, but my grandpa is doing his best to help me. I've seen him reading some of my school book stuff to teach the material. He's really interested in biology, so sometimes we do that together so we can both learn. It's one of my best subjects. My favorite is history, though. I always save it for last because it's fun. I like the wars and stuff because strategies are fun. I don't fight as much either. Gramps set up a punching bag in the front yard that I can use instead, so there's really no point in using another person. I have a lot of new clothes, too. Mom couldn't afford them before, probably because she spent all her money on coke and shite, but my grandpa owns a restaurant and has a ton of money. He actually got me a job there, since he owns it, but I only have to work when I want to. I like working there, gets me some money, too. He's super considerate too. I mentioned that I like orange juice and now we always have orange juice in the fridge. I like spaghetti, and now he makes it at least once a week. He caught me using an old Lego set my uncle left in my room and then the next day, I came home from school and there's a giant box of Legos on my bed. One time I got sick, nothing too bad, probably just a flu. He literally didn't let me do the dishes even though it was my night. He kept bringing me water and asking if I was okay, and he made me go to bed crazy early. He even tucked me in like some baby, but I don't know, I guess it was kinda cool. My mom never did any of that, even when I was an actual baby. He's just a nice dude. There are some things I don't like about Gramps. Sometimes he forgets to ask before hugging me. He loves hugs. Sometimes he comes into my room without knocking. He snores like a tractor. He doesn't let me watch anything rated over PG-13 unless he's seen it before and thinks it's okay. And sometimes he vacuums at 2 a.m. because he can't sleep. I don't mind that shit though, because without him I'd probably be on the street and end up like my mom. My wife has been cold and distant towards me ever since I helped my ex through a bad time. I, 35 male, was in a long-term relationship with a woman, 33 female, between the ages of when I was 20 to 30 years old, until she left for a job in another state. Later she told me long-distance relationships don't work so we broke up, and then I found out that she was engaged. I met my wife, 30 female, a year later, and honestly, I never really understood what love was until then. With her, everything felt different. Love was easy, not a constant struggle like I later realized it was with my ex. I'm not trying to put down my previous relationship or my ex. We grew up together and learned a lot from each other. Sometimes, you don't like something when it happens, but later on, You see, it was for the best. That's how I feel about my last relationship ending. I was really upset and heartbroken at the time, but looking back, I'm glad it happened. If it hadn't, I wouldn't have discovered what true love or happiness feels like. At the same time I met my wife, my ex moved back and she said that she regretted ending things and that we loved each other. I wasn't in love with her anymore and I turned her down. She is still a good friend and I like her as a friend. She is, however, my sister's best friend. My wife knows her and she has never been threatened by her because we have always had a solid relationship. My ex's mom unfortunately passed away suddenly and she has been inconsolable and broken since. I cannot even imagine the pain. My sister is devastated too and she has been by her side. I have too been supportive and it felt very appropriated. My sister encouraged me to be there and support our friend. My wife didn't mind in the beginning, but I felt that she started being uncomfortable that I went on walks and hikes with my ex. But it was doing her good to keep her mind of things and I found my wife's coldness uncalled for. I never experienced her as cold-hearted or callous, but here we are. She just didn't like the mention of my ex, so I didn't mention her either. Then a week after New Year's my sister planned a week-long vacation for her and her husband, my ex, me and another couple that my sister and ex are friends with. My wife this time was very upset and said that she didn't want me to go. She asked why she wasn't invited then if it was just an innocent hangout. My sister said that it was ridiculous because we've been friends since high school, but my wife said that my sister never really liked her. I thought she was being unfair and ridiculous. However, she said that she didn't want me to be on that trip. Ever since the trip, my wife hasn't been the same. She isn't rude or upset or sad, but she just doesn't engage with me. She doesn't start conversations. When I try to confront her she doesn't engage in arguments. I don't know what to do. She doesn't even think that something has changed. When I am going out, she doesn't even care if I was taking a hike with my ex and she didn't get bothered. Also, when my sister had her birthday, my wife told me that morning that she was feeling sick and didn't want to risk infecting the others, and so she just sent a text to my sister and a present with me. Now, let me explain what finally broke the camel's back. My ex is having her birthday party on Friday, and both me and my wife are invited. My wife just said sorry, can't do, I'm already booked for a work friend's 50+50 birthday. I asked her why I wasn't invited. She said that I was, but that she was taking her nephew so I didn't need to go with her so I could go to my party instead. This is very out of character for my wife, who would have tried to make other solutions like dropping by one party first then the other, but she just didn't care. I asked her if she could come with me instead since her work colleague isn't a close friend, but she just dismissed me and laughed mirthfully, calling me ridiculous. I'm being sued for helping a choking victim. Well, I took y'all's advice and went back to the restaurant. I spent about an hour and a half waiting and then speaking with a shift manager who called the general manager who called the owner, and you can see where this domino effect is going. They all swore up and down that not one person had come to ask for a tape or anything of the sort. Then I started looking for defense attorneys, but I wasn't sure exactly how to proceed honestly. Man, I can't explain it, but this week I've been mortified and really on edge. Finally, when I told my friends about everything, one of them fessed up to the fact that it was actually them and they made it up as some kind of prank. Pretty twisted joke. I wasn't laughing. I'm pretty pissed and seriously reconsidering my relationship with him. I appreciate everyone's support, excluding the people who made fun of my mother's death or tried to figure out where I lived. I mean, seriously, who does something like that? Absolutely odd if you ask me to be 100% honest about it. My daughter snuck into my son's room without permission and unalived his cat. My son Jake moved out at 18 and got his own place. First thing he did was get a cat. Our daughter Amy is allergic to them, so he wasn't allowed one when he lived with us. He gave us a key to his place, and was very firm about it being only for emergencies, if something should happen, God forbid. This Thursday he went to a wedding to another city, and his plan was to drive home as soon as it finishes, even if it means he drives at night. His place would be empty the entire day. Unbeknownst to us, Amy took the keys Jake left with us and went to his place with her friend. The reasoning behind this was that his place is in the city, close to the places they had plans to go to, whereas our house is more in the outskirts and further away from all the fun. So they wanted to go to Jake's place to get ready and pregame, because he wouldn't be home until very late at night or more likely early in the AM. While the cat was sleeping on the floor, they had drinks and accidentally stepped on it, and unalived it. In a panic, they just left the place. When Amy came home she went straight to her room. Jake calls me at 5 AM extremely upset, and I pieced together from the frantic rambling that his cat is dead. I even stupidly asked him if she was sick. He starts crying and goes into disgusting detail about how he came home to blood everywhere and his cat squished. At this point I have no clue about Amy sneaking in and using the place as a get-ready lounge. Obviously I'm upset and ask him about what happened and whatever, and he says he is going to ask his landlord for the security footage for the building. I try to console him the best I can and we end the call. At breakfast I tell my husband and Amy about it and she visibly panics at the mention of the security footage and comes clean. She says she is really sorry. I'm in shock and don't know what to do, call Jake and tell him, or wait for him to find out, or what? He calls again around 11 strangely calm. Says Amy unalived his cat, but you already knew that, didn't you, and how she just couldn't let him have a pet even now, she just had to ruin it. I ask him to calm down, to come over to talk this over. Is he going to sue his damn sister? He starts absolutely screaming at me about how he knew I wouldn't make the golden child take responsibility. I tell him Amy has been inconsolable since it happened and he tells me all she has to do is turn the waterworks on and she becomes the victim, and you let it happen every single time. He starts making threats again. Amy is now really sad and I'm trying to console her by telling her it was an accident. Enjoy $2 million worth of nothing. The year is 2004, my grandfather on my mom's side was a physicist and had developed a way of making these machines that made silicon wafers that were used in making microchips. Back then it was breaking edge technology in the microchip field. My grandfather's company made the machines that made these wafers in a way that no other companies could. Anyway, my mom handles orders of these machines. She managed the company back then with my grandmother. One machine in particular was supposed to go to this one technology company based in Korea. They had purchased a machine that made one specific kind of chip. That machine was worth $2 million, so there was lots of communication obviously on the machine's exact specifications. Well, the communication director for the Korean company was this preppy little prick well called SH, Poophead. SH gives my mom's company the exact specifications for the machine and a down payment of $500K or so to make the machine. So the company makes the machine and ships it to Korea with an engineer to set it up when they get there. At 3 o'clock in the morning, my mom gets a call from SH. In bad English, he basically tells my mom that we needed to include some feature with it that he claimed he asked for, but did not, or he's not sending out the rest of the $1.5 million. My mom is confused at first, then asks to speak with his manager. He keeps saying no. So then she asks if she's on speakerphone and if the engineer, Glenn, is in the room. The answer is yes to both. She then tells Glenn to put the machine to sleep and get on the next flight home. Putting the machine to sleep basically makes it inert, as you may have guessed. Only our engineers could turn the machine back on again. She then asks if Glenn understood her and Glenn says yes. Then she hears some hush talking. Glenn later tells her that another Korean guy was asking SH if SH knew what my mom said. SH did not. The other Korean guy tells SH. And SH starts to yell at my mom. My mom hangs up. 20 minutes later the phone rings again. It's SH's manager. SH has been fired after the machine was put to sleep and Glenn left the building. Glenn was almost at the airport when my mom called him, explained and told him to go back. The $1.5 million was released and all ended well. Except for SH.
What was the creepiest thing someone said on the first date? Went out with a girl one night, and after dinner she drove me up into the mountains. I was new to the area, and after a while, when there were no more lights, she started talking about cereal. I still remember her saying I used to think about getting away with stuff like that sometimes. Stay safe with public data check and anonymously reverse phone look up your dates before you go. Was new in town, swiping on Tinder because I was bored. He said. Do your friends know you're on a date? No. I could. You and no one would know, haha. There was no second date.
Have you ever made somebody cry of embarrassment? So I'm pulling a long day, up at 3:30 a.m. to get to the airport, pull a full day working in a different country, and head back to the airport at 6 p.m., just to get back to my bed late at night. A long day, and there's nothing to eat the whole day but road food. Even the freaking business lunch that I've been looking forward to is in a low-rent cafeteria due to refurbishments at the client's site. I hold it together through the day, the occasional grumble silenced by fastidious willpower and an air of professional courtesy. But things are going badly for my guts by the time I'm waving goodbye and getting into the airport taxi. Now I'm used to taxis where you sit in the back separated by a screen, but this is more of a private hire situation, and I'm up at the front with the driver. I'm actually irritated that I'm still holding back this storm of gas that's been building through meeting after meeting with no opportunity for release, but for propriety's sake I don't let rip next to the poor cabbie. Turns out manners are a one-way street. We've been driving about 5 minutes, and this terrible smell hits my nose. The cabbie has ripped one. I can't believe it. My eyes are watering. And he just carries on talking about the weather like it hasn't even happened. I figure he's probably embarrassed so I don't say anything. But a couple of minutes later, another one. Bam. It's disgusting. I have to close my mouth because the air's thick enough you can basically taste it. But then I'm just breathing through my nose, which is helping nobody. It actually feels like it's burning me. My throat is closing up. Above all, it seems so deeply unfair. I'm here maintaining some class, holding back a fart that could jumpstart a second universe, but I'm still breathing the same shit gas as if I wasn't, courtesy of my filthy cabbie. I think, female it, if this guy goes in for round 3 I am releasing my demons and letting him take the blame. We're 5 minutes out, and he parks another air biscuit. Female you, I think, and I do the deed. It's perfectly executed. A silent release of a full day of pressure. Every fart has been banked since 9 a.m., and I'm cashing them all in with interest. It's a silent rush of hot air, compressed into 10 seconds of pure release. I'm almost surprised you don't hear my rusty knothole slam shut when it finally ends. Mission accomplished. The perfect undercover fart. Know what you're thinking. How did this go wrong? Didn't gamble and lose? Didn't let out a loud, incriminating trumpet? Didn't puke, or pee, knock his coffee into his lap or set off the passenger airbags? Nope. It all went according to plan. For a moment, I was proud of myself. Then the smell hits. I have outdone myself. It's a devastating riposte to what has come before. It hits all the usual notes and adds a hint of burning rubber for effect. It's a spectacular crescendo of wrongful aromas. I can recognize every awful thing I've eaten all day in the mix. It's a fart so carefully matured it could have come with tasting notes, and they would have been one word in length. Don't. Now let me tell you how this was in female up. The electric window slowly slides down next to me, and the cold air hits my face. The cabbie turns to me, with actual tears in his eyes, and says, I am so sorry. What for? I ask innocently. That fart, he replies, eyes wide open, as if it should be obvious. I mean, geez, everybody farts, we're only human. But that, I'm just so sorry. He leaves the windows down all the way into the airport, and gives me a discount on the fare. All the red-eye way home. All I can think is I stink so bad. I've made a cabbie apologize. Am I the jerk for telling my mom I don't give a damn about my autistic brother? My parents were very loving when I was kid, but when I was 7 years old, my mom gave birth to my younger brother. I tried to love him, but I noticed that as soon as he came, my parents stopped paying that much attention to me. It got even worse when he was diagnosed with autism when he was 3 years old. Now, my dad is never home and my mom talks to me about once a day because she's so busy dealing with my brother's meltdowns. I've known my best friend Rachel since we were in kindergarten. Her mom is the nicest person I've ever met. Rachel and I played soccer, but my mom was rarely able to take me to practices and games, so Rachel's mom would always take me. I used to be in the school choir and my parents went to like one performance during the 6 years I did it. Rachel's mom was at every performance for me even though Rachel wasn't in choir. Those are just a few examples, but Rachel's mom has always been there for me when my parents weren't available. My mom never really cares what I'm doing unless she needs me to watch my brother, so I spend a lot of time at Rachel's house. Once I spent a whole weekend there and my mom didn't even call to ask where I am. Rachel's family go on a lot of vacations and they often take me. They're going to Disney World during Thanksgiving break and invited me to come with them. I asked my dad and he said I could go. They've already planned and booked everything and I'm really excited. I've been to Disneyland once with my family and it was horrible. My brother threw a huge tantrum on the first day because he wanted to go on the rides alone and sit between mom and dad, so I had to stay in the hotel most of the time. My brother found out that I'm going to Disney and he had a really big meltdown. He loves Disney and he was mad that I was going without him. My mom told me that she was planning to go to Washington to visit my grandparents. My dad didn't say anything about that, so I'm pretty sure she just made that up to stop me from going. And even if they are going, I don't want to. I don't want to go on a 14-hour car ride with my brother, and I'm pretty sure when we get there they're either going to make me stay with him while they go out or take him out and leave me alone in the hotel. I also wouldn't be allowed to go out on my own. She told me that I need to think about my brother and his feelings are more important because he's younger and autistic. I told her that I honestly don't give a F about my brother's feelings and I wish he was never born. He was there when I said all this and he's been crying and screaming for the last 3 hours and it's giving me a headache. My mom has been trying to calm him down and my dad said that he'll still let me go because he understands I'm frustrated. He also grew up with neurodivergent siblings, so he knows what it's like. My mom said that I'm a rude, ungrateful brat and I need to be kinder to my brother. Am I the jerk? TikTok has ruined my marriage with my husband of 12 years. I, 37, female. I'm going through a divorce from my husband, 43, male, because he is not the same person I married anymore. We have been married for 12 years. We have 2 daughters. I thought everything was perfect in our life. We had good communication, a good life. There were arguments, but we solved those as a team. Until one day, my husband started obsessing over the traditional life. We were not a traditional couple. We both work. We both do chores and childcare. He didn't complain about it. Around March this year, he started acting weird. He complained about how I looked. He complained about the food. He complained about me working long hours even though I work the same hours as he does. Throughout our marriage, he never had any complaints about the food I cook. I dress up in a more comfortable attire when I'm in my house. He never had a problem with that, ever. It all started to change when he started to consume traditional TikTok videos. I noticed he watches videos of a certain popular TikTok girl who posts content about being a traditional wife. Her content looks made up and unrealistic to me because it was 100% made for the male audience. From there, my husband started complaining, "Why can't you dress like her when you were at home? Why don't you cook like her? I wish I had a wife like her who was waiting for me to come home. You do not love me because you do not see me as an authority in my own house." I tried to reason with him. He wanted me to quit my job and be a full-time housewife. I told him it was not possible with our current income. Then he started to share all those videos on different social medias. The verbal abuse didn't just stop there. It was almost regular. He would constantly tell me I am not worthy. That he needs a wife who is submissive like that TikTok girl. I told him this was all an act that she puts up for the world to see. This is not reality. Plus, nobody cleans their house. Wearing pretty dresses. The dresses will get dirty. My husband would ignore me. He would always compare me to his friend's wife who is a homemaker. He knew I wasn't the type of woman who wanted to be a homemaker. He had no problem with it. I tried to tell him to stop watching this type of content. It really hurts me that he would idolize another woman rather than his wife. My last straw came when I caught him talking to another woman. He wasn't even ashamed or felt remorse. He told me he deserves better. Now here I am waiting for my divorce to finalize. He has already moved on with the type of girl that he wanted. I don't know why it happened. How did I lose a sweet, loving husband overnight over something so stupid? My wife confessed to the worst thing she ever did. Does going ahead with my shitty tall man prank make me an even shittier husband? Maybe, but see, Emma was always gullible. Stupidly so. It was one of the things I loved most about her, honestly. We met while working part-time at a local cinema, and there we were, sweeping up leftover popcorn, when she said, "What's this?" In her right hand, there was a tool belt. The projector had probably malfunctioned and some repairman forgot his equipment. As a joke, I said, "Didn't you know a construction worker died when they were building this place?" From that moment on, she wouldn't set foot inside Screen 6. Didn't want to risk bumping into a ghost, you see. I thought it was cute, and just a few weeks later my girlfriend ghosted me, so I asked Emma if she'd like to grab a coffee sometime. Rather than directly tell her about the urban legend, I left some reading material scattered around, and when she suggested a different location for the camping trip, all while doing a terrible job of masking her anxiety, I knew it was game on. In between a scattering of skeletal trees, I set up our tent. Oh sure, Emma begged me to find a better, aka less scary, spot, but at the same time, the soles of her feet were raw slabs of beef from the 20-mile hike, so she eventually relented. After we tucked into a pot of beef stew, we turned in for the night. Knowing the first sudden noise would spook her, I waited. Out of nowhere, she sat bolt upright in her sleeping bag. bag. What the hell was that? We listened as wind howled through the trees. I pretended a dry cramp seized my throat. It's the tall man. She threw her arms around me, her eyes pooling with tears. Make it stop, please. In a high, frightened voice, I said, the legends say the only way is to confess our sins. What bad things have we done? Unable to speak, she just lay there, trembling, secretly rolling my eyes but outwardly maintaining the act. I said, I'll go first. The last house I rented, I salted the garden because the landlord wouldn't return my deposit. And last month I accidentally stole a Mars bar and didn't go back to pay for it. She took several deep, shuddery breaths. I killed your college girlfriend, the one you were dating when we first met. I slit her throat and filled her backpack with rocks and dumped her body in the Blackstaff River. While I lay there, shocked, tree branches scraped together roughly. Emma squealed and quickly added, and I killed that intern at your work too. The flirty one. I cut her up and dumped the pieces in a landfill. Outside, the wind eased, and the forest went back to sleep. After 10 seconds of dead silence, Emma let out a sigh of relief, and then pulled me in close.
My husband got our girlfriend pregnant without discussing it with me. My husband, 38 male, and I, 30 female, are in an open marriage. We've been married for 5 years and open for the past 2 years. Currently, we have a long-term girlfriend, 26 female, that we have both been with for just over a year. I'm also 30 weeks pregnant and we're also excited to welcome our daughter into the world soon. Our relationship and time in the bedroom has never been better, until the other day when our girlfriend announced her pregnancy to us. I was so surprised, I didn't know she had been seeing anyone else. After I congratulated her, I asked who was the father and she said that my husband was. This was something that we never talked about at all, so I politely asked her to leave while I discussed this with my husband. Apparently, her seeing me pregnant and so excited convinced her that she was ready for motherhood herself, and she told my husband that she would be stopping her birth control. My husband never told this to me and neither did our girlfriend, so the entire time we've been together for the past few months, they were having completely unprotected lovemaking without my knowledge, which was not part of our arrangement. I'm still his wife and she's just our girlfriend. I feel so betrayed by my husband to go behind my back like that. They don't understand why I'm mad. They think that I should be happy. I was aware that my husband has a breeding fetish, so do I, but this is much different than just role-playing situations and they don't seem to understand that. I don't know how else to express to them how disrespectful that was to me.
Principal tried to give me detention, so I made him lose that power. A little long, and it's not that petty, but knowing that he didn't get to just turn an excused absence into an unexcused one and that he wasn't allowed to do it to anyone else still makes me feel better about what happened. Approx 15 years ago. My senior year of high school, my bio dad decided to implode our lives. Between him causing drama, my dog of 12 years passing away, wisdom teeth removal, first period, lasted a month and I was bleeding through supers in less than 4 hours, and doing college campus visits I missed a bit of school. Some days I was so physically ill from the emotional toll, undiagnosed ADHD, and depression, I just needed a break. One of my vice principals, Mr. Rules, decided that I had missed too much school, even though my mom called me out and it was all approved absences. He caught me one day and told me that I had to attend detention unless I had a doctor's note for my absence the day before. No warning, no meeting with the truancy officer, no meeting with the school counselor. Mind you, I was maintaining a 3.8 GPA, involved in several extracurricular activities, and a part-time job. After classes I called my primary care's office and they agreed to write me a note. My mom had called the nurse line to see if they felt I needed to come in for an apt when I had been out. So they had a record of my fever and symptoms, and the doctor recommendation to stay home. Swung by, picked up the note, went back to school before detention started. The other vice principal, Mr. Smith, was at the desk when I got there and the one who wanted to give me detention was elsewhere. Mr. Smith was surprised that I was there and asked if he could help. I explained everything, and showed him my note. Told me he would pass along the note to Mr. Rules and not to worry about the detention. On my way out the front door, Mr. Rules catches me and asks where I think I'm going as detention is about to begin. I kindly advise him that I just dropped off my doctor's note with Mr. Smith, who had said I didn't need to stay since I fulfilled my Rules requirements. I could see a whole range of emotions flash across my Rules' face, but he begrudgingly let me go. The vein in his forehead looked ready to pop. I told my mom what had happened. She called the head principal. I don't know what was said. I know that she had a conference call with someone from the school board, and the school counselor. She shared the litany of things we were going through, along with my mental health state, and a few other items that were happening. Mr. Rules were no longer allowed to discuss my attendance with me the rest of the year. Even though he would glare at me or ignore me whenever we were in the same room. I also heard that he wasn't allowed to make any other decisions about attendance issues/concerns without Mr. Smith, the truancy officer, or the head principal present. They also instituted a new rule with the office staff that any questionable absences for any student had to be brought to the head principal only. As it turned out, one of the office ladies didn't like my mom or I. It was related to that whole bio dad imploding our lives and had taken that absence to Mr. Rules specifically because she knew he would change it to unexcused. She was moved from the front office to another area and not allowed to answer the phones after that. Mr. Smith checked in with me occasionally to make sure I was doing okay and if I needed any extra time with the school counselor. As long as I maintained my grades, my teachers had no issues with my performance, and no unexcused absences. They didn't bother me about the extra days away.
I found out that my fiancé has been spending my money to pay for his deadbeat brother's expenses, but now he's angry and told me I don't have the right to control my money. I found out that my fiancé has been spending my money to pay for his deadbeat brother's expenses, but now he's angry and told me I don't have the right to control my money. My fiancé's brother Chris moved to Mississippi from our hometown 2 years ago to be with some girl he met online. Chris has always been the type to make terrible life choices, and my fiancé is always the one who bails him out. My fiancé does this because he has survivor's guilt. They lived with their father growing up, and their father hated Chris with a burning passion for whatever reason but loved my fiancé Heath, so Heath saw a lot. Yes, they both got out physically, but mentally, Chris was ruined. He refuses therapy and gets into trouble constantly. He is 33, and my fiancé is 26. So when Chris left to go to Mississippi, I worked 100 hours a week at the hospital while Heath stayed home. He had no income? However, I started noticing money going missing quite often. When I checked the bank statements, Heath handled them because he was an accountant for a couple of years and better at budgeting. I noticed a SHT ton of Amazon purchases and money transfers through FB Pay. When I confronted him, he told me his brother and the chick didn't work out, so he helped him with hotel stays, food, and essentials. It's important to note that during this time, I was pissed because of how much money was being spent and limited him on what he could send his brother a month because it was not my responsibility. So I didn't make him stop but limited him. Well, budget cuts went through my hospital 2 months ago, and I was cut, along with 340 other employees. 4 wings were closed down, mine being one of them. So I am currently unemployed, but Heath works constantly now. I also just got back my taxes and a big chunk of money. Last night, Chris called, and Heath shut the bedroom door, but I walked in roughly 10 minutes later and saw Heath had my debit card in hand, typing in the info on Amazon to buy his brother over $400 worth of SHT, books, board games, playing cards, nothing he needed. I ripped the debit card out of his hand and asked him what the FCK he is doing, and he just looks at me like I am an and asks WTF? I had the nerve to do that. I told him I was not fishing out $400 worth of SHT to his brother, and he goes, my brother has nothing to effing do, and this is the only way I can help. He said since I got back a ton of money, I should be willing to help, especially considering he gets his paycheck Friday and can make up for it. I still said no. He is now saying I am a controlling soul. Update, today, Chris called Heath again, but Heath was in the shower, so I answered. Chris immediately started talking, not realizing it was me on the line. He asked Heath to help him buy a car, saying he was tired of being stuck with no transportation. I was floored. I ripped into Chris, telling him he needed to start taking responsibility for his own life and stop relying on Heath to bail him out whenever he made a poor decision. I clarified that we were not his personal bank and that his constant demands strained our relationship and finances. He told me Heath owes him, and I told him they were no longer children. Making his brother sorry for something he is not at fault for is deeply concerning, and he should get himself checked. He called me a B, and I told him that this B owns the money he is leeching. I told him that he should go effing work. When Heath came out of the shower, I confronted him. I told him about the call and how I had handled it. I clarified that I would kick him out if he did not stop giving his brother money. I love Heath but cannot keep supporting his brother's irresponsible lifestyle, especially at my expense. Heath looked shocked and hurt, but I could see he understood the gravity of the situation. He promised to talk to Chris and set boundaries, but only time will tell if he will follow through.
My racist friend called me a starving African kid because I'm skinny and brown. When I called her a whale she started crying and I'm being forced to apologize. A couple of girls in my college friend group have a roommate named January. I am acquainted with her and we never really had any problems. We actually made quite a good beer pong duo. She's usually pretty fun when she's intoxicated, but this time, it ended with her in tears. Basically, I'm a tall and lanky male at 6 feet 1 inch and 155 pounds and Jan is a white chick on the heavier side. Recently, we had a watch party at Jan's apartment for the Michigan football bowl game where our friends were all having a good time getting pretty tipsy. My buddy and I were talking about whether our quarterback should declare for the draft or return. I said, I sure hope he comes back. Dylan, our backup quarterback, is still young and is still pretty scrawny. Jan has a huge crush on Dylan and gets really defensive when he's insulted. She always takes his side, even if the insults are just jokes that he laughs at. Well, she didn't appreciate that I called him skinny and started commenting on my weight. She went on a whole Dr. Ken tirade saying, what makes you think that you can call him skinny when you're literally built of twigs? You would die playing football. To be honest, I don't think you could even lift a helmet. At first, I took it on the chin, had a chuckle about it, and poked back a bit. I usually got my leg pulled about my physique but I never took it personally. Until she started making it personal. It went from her joking about me being a twig to her telling me, look at you, you're like one of those starving African kids on those TV commercials. I'm brown but not African, that's why Dylan is a chick magnet and, my ex, dumped you. You look malnourished. I instantly got uncomfortable with her comments and didn't understand why she took it that far. Dylan was nowhere around and he actually wouldn't like what she's telling me. Because we're really close. If anything, he would jump to defend me like she does with him. She kept going though and now I was beginning to boil. I wasn't even responding at this point, just biting my tongue because I didn't think it was worth it. But then I snapped. When she told me, go lift some weights. It's okay, no one will judge you if you can only curl 5 pounds, I responded with, if you could tell me what your current diet is, I'm sure I'll put on weight in no time. The room went silent in seconds. I was actually annoyed at that because when she was making fun of me, they were all laughing and instigating. But when I retaliate, all of a sudden it's a problem that I'm commenting on her weight. She asked me, "What are you trying to say?" To which I said, "If I'm a malnourished African then you could be on The Biggest Loser. And I'm pretty certain you wouldn't win." She got really mad and told me this was why my ex left me and I should F myself. I had enough of her at that point because she started all of this. If she had just kept her mouth shut, I wouldn't have said, "And no guy wants you. The last PP you got was Moby PP. Effing whale." At this point she was in tears, makeup running and everything. Her chick friends helped her into a bedroom to comfort her while looking back at me with a death glare. Since this was at Jan's place, I figured I should leave so I finished my beer and left. Later that night, I got a FaceTime call from Jan's roommate. She urged me to apologize because she was just playing around and I went too far. I didn't feel that way and I don't want to apologize because she was having such a great time making fun of me, but pulled the crocodile tears, making me look like the bad guy in all of this. What did you find out about your teacher that shocked you? When I was 10 years old, I disappointed my parents so severely that my mom actually told me that she was ashamed of me. We had a new teacher at school, a young and attractive woman who I didn't particularly like. There was a weekly magazine and TV guide that always featured a naked woman who was chosen from readers who sent in their pictures. You can probably guess where I'm going with this. Another kid happened to find an old edition of the magazine that featured our new teacher as the weekly babe. We convinced one teacher that another had sent us to make copies of some worksheets, and made about 100 copies of the picture. We distributed them all around the school. The teacher was around 25 years old, and the pictures were taken years earlier, when she was just 17. This wasn't before the internet existed, but it was before it evolved into the black hole of revenge porn and shame that it is today. She had no reason to think that the old picture would come back to haunt her nearly a decade later, and she was shocked and humiliated. When I close my eyes, I can still see my parents' faces the way they looked when they were called to the school and informed of my actions. It was so painfully clear that they couldn't believe I'd let them down like that. Yes, I discovered something shocking about my teacher, and my immature reaction was to share it with the world for my own amusement. It has been more than 21 years, and I swear that writing this is making me turn red with shame. What's the scummiest thing your best friend has done behind your back? My best friend effed my girlfriend and sent me video proof. My best friend and I have known each other for a couple of years. He has helped me at my lowest points and I helped him get through his father going through with suicide. Recently, I got a girlfriend. This girl has been one that my best friend found super attractive, but when it became clear to us that she took interest in me, he backed off and allowed me to be with her. There seemed to be no hard feelings. I found her interest in me to be odd because she was so beautiful, with massive honkers and a behind so large that Kawhi Leonard couldn't wrap his hands around it. I on the other hand was nerdy, interested in video games, didn't work out etc. Well, our relationship was actually going very well until I got a video one night sent to me by my best friend. I clicked into it, curious, as he always sent me memes. But that video was far from funny. It was of him and my girl, they were both completely out of it, intoxicated to a great length. My best friend said in the video, "Sorry Ron but this behind is way too good to pass up on." She came onto me first, and with Eddie positioned the camera and got behind my girlfriend. I saw and heard everything. I was appalled, and distraught, now insecure as it seemed that my girlfriend was loving it way more than she ever loved intimacy with me. Though realistically, I understood why. My best friend had the body of a Greek god, and way more experience in the bedroom than me. But that video broke me. I watched the whole thing, crying into my pillow, and afterwards I bolted upstairs and actually threw up. I felt sick to my stomach. The next morning I simply laid in bed. I sent my girlfriend a breakup text and blocked her. I blocked my best friend too. I didn't hear from them for a while. I became really depressed and started eating a lot, packing on the pounds, not actually a bad thing as I was rail thin beforehand, but my mental health was awful. I couldn't get out of bed. However, I finally did. What helped me was this motivational speaker David Goggins. I watched him do a podcast and stopped feeling sorry for myself. That day I went on a run, ate 3 healthy meals, no junk food, and took a shower. That was the day I started changing. I started running, eating clean, working out. I was doing so well. I even started taking a testosterone supplement called the Kingmaker. I found it on Amazon and figured it was worth a try. It worked well. My higher test now meant I woke up with stiffies in the morning. I watched Goggins every day, read his books and strived to become a man like him. Then one day while eating a meal I was on social media and saw a post made by a friend. It was him and my ex together. They seemed happy, and I was overcome with rage. I decided I need to make them regret what they did. I wanted my best friend to feel the pain that I felt, the pain of betrayal. Without missing a beat, I decided I was going to F his sister. I was going to send a video as well. I messaged his sister, who thankfully seemed unaware of everything that happened between us, and told her I wanted to catch up and suggested meeting for coffee. She agreed, and I'm now meeting her for coffee in a few days. I'll clap those cheeks, unblock my best friend simply to send a video of it and block him again.
What's a time where trusting your gut quite literally saved your life? My girlfriend met up with a work friend at a bar. This girl was with a guy who gave me seriously bad vibes. He was fake friendly but his eyes were crazy, she didn't see it. I wasn't having it. I told her I was leaving, and she needed to come. We fought, I left, she came running after. The next morning, we find out he skipped town with one of the other girls he was talking to. Neither him or the girl have been heard from since. I was driving home from a friend's house late one night. I was probably 16 to 17 years old and had a Mustang, so I was booking it down a back road when I heard this loud, "Slow down now" in my head, louder than the music I had cranked up. I immediately slowed down to well below the speed limit, and when I came around the next turn there was a train coming across some unmarked tracks.
My family is pressuring me to give my good-for-nothing sister my wedding venue because she needs it more and is pregnant. My fiancé and I have been together for 8 years and engaged for 3. I was doing my PhD program and was juggling planning the wedding. My fiancé took much of that work, but it was perfect because our dream venue was booked till after my graduation. So what we did is book our dream venue 3 years in advance. It is really a beautiful venue. The only slot we got was September of this year. My sister got engaged a few months ago. They were planning on having a spring wedding next year. They had no venue lined up, but had a few vendors lined up as well as a set date. Yesterday our parents invited us and our backslashes to a family barbecue, where my sister announced to our extended family that she is expecting. Everyone was so happy for her and my brother-in-law. My nan asked my sister if the wedding was still on the set date or if they were going to wait, because of the baby. She said no, that she hoped to move it to September. We don't have many out-of-town guests so they could attend both weddings no problem. Nan was happy and asked sister if she needed help planning such a short-notice wedding. My sister then turned around and said, "That's what I wanted to talk to you about. I was really hoping we could kinda like take your venue. I really cannot stress myself too much with planning a wedding while going to maternity classes. And I think it is so beautiful. It would really mean a lot to me." It went silent. But everyone was looking at me expecting me to say yes, of course, everything for my little sister. My brother-in-law looked very uncomfortable and told her that they had talked about this and that it was not okay to put me on the spot. But my sister just said, "Don't be like that. My sister wants to do what's best for me, so it's no big deal, right?" Definitely trying to guilt trip me into saying yes. I just said, "Well, it kind of is. I don't know. I have my heart really set on the venue." Cue the crying. She stormed off. Nan told me that I was being selfish because she needed the venue more than I did. I tried to defend myself and my mother said, "You waited 3 years. Would it have killed you to wait a few more months? When has your sister ever asked you for something?" A few comments later my fiancé got really mad and we left. My sister called me crying and said that it was unfair that I always get what I want and that I could have done this one thing for her. Dad said it is just a venue and what matters is the person who you are marrying. He is kind of right, but we have been planning for so long. My fiancé is furious with my family and doesn't even want my sister to come. Now my family is threatening not to come because I am being selfish and my sister needs it more than me because having a baby is too stressful. My brother-in-law called me and apologized for the inconvenience. He told me he had discussed it with my sister and she had told him she would not ask. He is properly mad at her now and warned me that my sister is blaming me for potentially ruining her marriage. My father has sent me about 5 texts along the lines of, "I hope you are happy your sister hasn't stopped crying since yesterday." What's really unfair is how quick they all took her side. My fiancé and I have decided to boot my sister from the bridal party and replace her with my aunt, who is the only family member that took my side. We have not decided whether or not we will invite my family as a whole. Furthermore, my mom took it upon herself to tell on us. She called fiancé's parents and told them that it would be best if my sister gets it because she is pregnant and preeclampsia runs in the family. Whatever that means. My future father-in-law told them to F off and basically rip my mom a new one for expecting something so ridiculous and that they were going to lose me if they kept playing favorite. So my mom is now crying too and saying that my father-in-law is an SS. Playing the victim sure runs in my family. This is just getting so pathetic. It seems straight out of a bad soap opera. My in-laws are driving to us currently with some supper and wine and basically told me to not worry and that no matter what happens that they will be my safety net. I cried of happiness. My sister saw this post and she lost her mind. She accused me of painting her like a loony and misinterpreting facts. But let's be honest, she was acting like a loony. She said that I was being unfair. That she is family and that she asked nicely because she loves me. She also underlines the fact that the opinion of internet strangers doesn't count because family is more important and I should focus on making my family happy. The only text I sent back was this: "I'm sorry that you perceived it that way. I did not in any way distort what happened. As you might notice, I didn't describe your tone nor exaggerated anything. Perhaps you had that night differently in your mind than I do, but I digress. I am sick and tired of bending to your will. My whole life I have been your servant and your doormat. Remember all the birthdays I had to share with you because you would throw a tantrum because you didn't get presents? Or when you cried so that I would fill out job applications for you? But the thing that has hurt me most till now is when you ruined my graduation. I am done. I admit that I also spoiled you, but I will not any longer. If you want to marry so badly before your baby is born, then you could look at Hotel X, that offers last-minute weddings. I have spent too much time planning my wedding to give it to you. And if you want to ruin our relationship over this, then go ahead. I will sleep safe and sound knowing that it wasn't my fault. She only sent me wow. You must love me so very much and blocked me. She unblocked me this morning to send me a screenshot of her talking to my wedding planner. Hello dear, I got the message from your mother and will proceed with the rebooking of the venue on the spot. However, this will have extra costs as we have to change the names on the contract. Please come by my office tomorrow so we can sign the new contract. Sister, that's great. I'll be there at 9. My parents haven't actually written to me since the thing with my father-in-law. My older brother contacted me and wanted to know what happened because he got a weird story from Mom and Dad. Mom had told him that I had offered previous to the barbecue to give up the venue to my sister and that I humiliated her. I told him what really happened and he had no problem believing me. We talked a lot about our parents' behavior and he confessed that him moving was partly due to our parents being poopheads to us. He told me that Mom had gotten wind from the post and was mad at me for betraying my family. I haven't written to my parents because I have to come to terms with the fact that they love my sister more than me, if they love me at all. At the wedding, we sat together and put passwords with the majority of our vendors and also with the venue directly. We haven't talked to our planner yet, which is why the text message exchange with my sister worries me so much. Also, we canceled the catering that my parents paid for. With such short notice, we won't be able to get a full catering like we wanted to. But all our friends and my fiancé's family will help us prepare a buffet, and everyone is going to chip in. That will be our bachelor party. As we will have to spend more on our food now, we canceled our bachelor parties and will have a family and friends cooking session. Thank you again for helping me see how toxic my family is. I will try to sort it out. If they apologize from the bottom of their heart, they will be allowed into my wedding, but if not, I still have my brother, who will be walking me down the aisle, and my aunt. We eventually got to calling my planner and she was actually really horrified. She told me she had never talked to my mother since the day we went to book the venue. She assured me that even if they were to call and say that I wanted it, I had to be present to make any changes. So we informed everyone that will work for us on our wedding and they offered to hire security for that day at a reduced price.
Are you still in touch with the first person you ever dated? No, as he's serving a federal prison sentence. We met in college, a Christian college I might add. We had a class together by accident. That Christmas he asked me out to holiday banquet. Very formal affair. We didn't see each other for long when we decided being friends was for the best, and we were, except, his idea of friendship was an awkward, suffocating experience. He constantly called or dropped by when I was at work. He worked nights while I worked days. I swear I don't know when he slept, and because he was up all night at work he would call me in the dead of night. If I didn't answer he would continue calling until I either answered or silenced my phone. I had a group of people from college that was friends with. About 15 of us would get together on weekends. Well, Paul, not his name, would ask to be invited. I did, to be kind, but I wondered sometimes if a day could pass where I didn't have communication with him in some way. Time passed and we all graduated college and moved in our lives, but Paul moved about 10 miles away from where I ended up living. Great. He was still everywhere I was. He joined the same church as me and started showing up at my job all the time again. Finally I sat him down. I explained that I needed some space. I needed some time where he wasn't always where I was. I wanted to date and get married eventually, but I couldn't because he was around me so much that men assumed we were dating. He was crushed. If you get married your husband won't want me to talk to you. You can't do that. He complained. Yeah, that's the idea of marriage, where you choose one man to be faithful to. Yep, he probably won't want me seeing another man every single day. That is true. Little did I know I'd just set a ticking time bomb. I took a vacation with some friends, a married couple. We were gone for 2 weeks. I turned my phone off. My gosh, I'd forgotten what life was like to not have it constantly ringing. But when I returned I was greeted with his intense anger. Where had I been? What had I done? How late had I stayed out? Had I met any men? Had I gone on dates? He peppered me with questions as if he were a jealous lover and not merely a good guy friend. I stopped him. I explained that my private life wasn't any of his business. That if I went on dates or met someone I wasn't required to report to him. He lost it, screaming, yelling, throwing things. That's it. Enough. You have gone too far and I have had enough. We need to go our separate ways. I hate to say it because we've been friends for years, but you cannot act this way. It isn't appropriate and you've crossed my boundaries too many times. For 2 weeks I heard nothing from him. I was starting to relax when, ring, ring, ring. It was the weekend and I was up late watching a movie when my phone started ringing from an unknown number. Curiosity got the better of me and I answered. I'm going to bill you. I'm going to cut you into tiny pieces and, I interrupted the strange whispered voice. Who the heck are you and what do you think you're doing calling me in the middle of the night? I used my stern teacher voice. Click. The phone went dead. I pulled out my .380 handgun and loaded it. I placed it in my nightstand and went to sleep. Monday morning when I arrived at work I was met by some coworkers that were concerned. Annie, you need to hear this. I was told and followed them to the school office. Someone dialed the voicemail on the phone and put it on speakerphone. Over and over, one after another were voice recordings in garbled or whispered voices threatening to bill me, calling me a whore and worse, growling into the phone. It had filled up the voicemail box. My heart sunk. I knew deep down who it was. My boss called me into his office. He had a background in security. Not security as in a mall cop or a security system for your home, but security, the kind involving the alphabet agencies of government and the military. Who is targeting you? Do you know? He asked. Oh yeah, I knew, and he knew him too. The police got involved and phone records were pulled but the calls came from prepaid phones under no name. We knew who it was but had no proof. Meanwhile, every night he filled up the voicemails of my phone and my work phone. Then I was walking across the parking lot of Walmart when I felt someone's eyes on me. I looked up to see his truck flying across the parking lot and into the road. Oh my God, He's following me now? I couldn't prove it, but he began showing up in public places at the same time as me. What could I do? It was in public, so it wasn't like I could complain when he had a right to be there as much as anyone else. Until one Friday night, a group of friends and I went out to eat. It was a group of men and women, and while some of them were dating, I wasn't dating anyone. But one of the guys did sit across from me. Before we even had our food, Paul stormed into the restaurant and was in my face shouting about how dare I date that man and I was a whore, and the restaurant was silent except for Paul. I was beyond embarrassed. The man sitting across from me stood up and grabbed Paul by the arm, unceremoniously dragging him outside. 10 minutes later, my friend returned while Paul didn't. I didn't ask, but I'm pretty sure Paul had the beatdown of the century because the other guy promised me Paul would be too afraid to hurt me now. For a few days I had peace, but then he was back at it again. And now I wasn't the only target. My friends started receiving the calls too. They shared voice recordings from their phones with me. She's a B. She's a ST. She's a W. We all knew she was me. And then one day it stopped. Everything stopped and eventually I started breathing again. Until about 6 months later, a man I worked with called me. Annie, turn on the local 6 o'clock news. Now, he said. I switched my TV over and nearly dropped my phone. There was Paul's face splashed across the screen. Paul Michelson, 28, was arrested today. He is accused of violating a restraining order, being weird, and touching. Michelson confessed to all charges. I listened to the news anchor recount the gruesome story of how he'd taken a woman to a hotel room and brutally attacked and touched her. She survived and managed to escape the room, and another hotel guest helped her call 911. Paul admitted to police that he had intended to bill her. Police even stated they were shocked at how much he admitted. They didn't even have to interrogate him. He voluntarily poured out the whole story. It seems I had found peace because he had found another woman to harass. I've changed names to protect his family, who were kind people and always treated me well. It isn't their fault he became the man he is. It has been many years since he was sentenced to prison. I believe he comes up for parole in 2024. I hope he doesn't get it. I've mentioned here before that I've only ever dated older men. Paul was the one exception to that, though we stopped dating years before his arrest.
I almost lost my husband because I gained about 100 pounds, but my best friend helped drop all my baby weight in months, and now my husband can't get enough of me. I met my husband after I had a complete glow up for college. I was the fat nerdy girl in high school, the type to hide inside of a book then talk to a guy, but I had enough of it when the guy I had been pining after for 3 years rejected me because I was, in direct quotes, a fatty. I developed a raging ed and lost all the weight in a matter of a few months, but I was clearly unhealthy and could barely survive. But when I met my husband, it all changed. He fell in love with me for me and always tried to get me to take care of myself. Though, in the back of my mind, I was always afraid that if he actually saw me at my ugliest, he'd leave like my old crush did. So I maintained my weight and made sure I was super skinny, even while he was trying to make me gain a few healthy pounds. We were always extremely close and eventually, we got married. Due to our active bedroom life, shortly after came our son. I let loose during the pregnancy due to concerns of harming the baby when I went to the gym. So, I let myself eat all the carbs and sugar I'd been dreaming of for years during the pregnancy, and it was my biggest mistake. I gained about 50 pounds, and it didn't go away when I gave birth. I felt like a figure of my old self, the ugly girl in high school who couldn't get anyone to love her. I was afraid he'd stop loving me as well, so I stopped trying. I felt like a prisoner in my massive, swollen, post-pregnancy body, and our intimacy life completely died. My hair started thinning out. I gained nearly 50 more pounds, and worse, my hormones caused my high school acne to come back. If I gained any more weight, I knew that my acne wouldn't be the only one of my body issues that would be back to haunt me. If I had to watch the number on the scale climb, I knew my old Ed might come back in full force, but I couldn't help myself and eventually gave up. I canceled my regular waxing appointments, had my hair in a dirty bun at all times, and wore my baggy clothes everywhere. I was ashamed of my appearance and tried to hide in plain sight, and it didn't take long for my husband to begin to notice that I was declining. After I hadn't washed my hair in 2 weeks, he sat me down and told me how concerned he was about me. He said all he wanted was for me to feel healthy and feel like myself again. He tried cooking me healthy meals as well as buying me new clothes, but it was no use. I still didn't feel good enough to put myself together. Meanwhile, my husband's help with the baby took a huge load off my plate, but we still had no physical relationship since I didn't feel comfortable in my own skin. I started avoiding kisses with him and we just kept drifting apart. When I looked in the mirror, I didn't recognize myself. Just the sight of my naked body could make me burst out in tears. Any closeness my husband and I had was fading by the day, and we walked around the house like strangers drowning in our own stress, alone. A couple months after giving birth, I was venting to my friend about my marriage and body issues, explaining how lost and undesirable I was feeling. To my surprise, she revealed that she went through something similar when she had her youngest. I asked her if she ever found some sort of solution. She calmed all my worries and settled my confusion by recommending Obvi Elite pills. She started explaining to me how she tried everything to lose her baby weight, but as soon as she started taking the capsules regularly, it fell right off. When I looked it up to buy some of it, it seemed super promising and popular, and I ordered some for myself. I remember feeling hopeless when I hit checkout because if this didn't work, I knew my marriage was as good as dead. I was still my usual depressed self, but somehow my saggy post-pregnancy belly started shrinking. Somehow, I dropped 3 pounds in 1 week, and as my body adjusted to the capsules, I dropped 5 pounds the following week. 3 months in, I realized I had shed a whopping 30 pounds. I continued to take the elite pills and was shocked when I started feeling a sudden difference in my hair as well as my nails. I started getting my natural nails done weekly, and it slowly helped me get back into all my other abandoned beauty routines. I couldn't believe the difference these Obvi elite pills were making. Even with zero makeup, I felt confident since my skin was clearing up and I could pull off new voluminous hairstyles. All these small changes in my looks added up. When we laid down for the night, my husband would run his hand through my hair and tell me how soft it was, and how happy he was that I was taking care of myself again. He told me how much he had missed seeing me smile. After committing to using the pills regularly, the rest of my fitness routine came naturally. I began going along with my husband at the gym, and it became an amazing shared hobby for us. My husband asked what my secret was and eventually started taking the capsules as well. Working out and cooking healthy meals together bonded us in a whole new way. It felt like discovering a new love language. We were both slimming down and doing our skincare routine side by side every night. I was finally feeling like my old self again, better. In fact, my husband became increasingly affectionate with me, and as I repaired my self-esteem, we repaired our intimacy life. We had been married for almost 10 years, but now we were connecting in a whole new way. My husband had dropped his dad bod belly, and we could barely keep our hands off each other. I was in disbelief that this new dreamlike chapter in our marriage had all started with pills. We were suddenly staying up all night together just to make love and talk about nothing. After combining the Obvi elite pills with a new gym routine, by the time my son was 2, I was in the best shape of my life. I ran almost every single day and my skin cleared up significantly. My hair grew so much that it fell past my waist, and gave me a huge confidence boost. Living through such a difficult body-altering pregnancy, as well as my awful postpartum, made me lose so much hope, and I was constantly scared of losing my family. Yet, with this new change, I felt at peace knowing I never had to worry about that ever again.
My boy best friend thinks we've been dating for a year. I've known him for 5 years, different classes and courses but same friend group. Over time, he has genuinely become one of the best people I know, and it's only getting better every day. I can't lie and say he's not my type, nerdy, charming, sweet, funny, flirty with the right amount of awkward. He comes pick me up from class, plays hockey without being a douchebag to the skaters, and most importantly, gets treats for my cat. Multiple strangers have mistaken us for a couple, even close people like our friends, professors, and worst of all, my family. He's kinda perfect, but I've never even thought of putting the moves on him. He's never shown romantic interest in me, we're friends, nothing more. Or that's what I thought. Today, he was spending the afternoon at my dorm, something he started about a year now. We're laying on my bed mindlessly watching Sonic cartoons when he says, verbatim, "So, baby, where do you want to go this Friday?" Matter of fact, this is the first time I've been called baby by him, so that kinda shocked me. Instead of asking why, I froze and was just like, what's happening Friday? He turns to me and kisses me, again, first time thing with us, hugs my waist and goes, our 1-year anniversary, idiot, I'm making reservations. At this point, I'm frozen, I genuinely don't know what to say, I'm gobsmacked. The dude I thought was my best friend, who never even showed interest in the dating thing, is under the idea that we've been dating for a whole year. I'm silent while he continues hugging me and scrolling on his phone, racking my brain thinking about what to tell him when his phone starts ringing. It's his mom, which he puts on speaker and she deadass goes, "Hi, are you still with your girlfriend?" Oh, so now his mom thinks we're dating too? He tells her yes, asks why she called, she asks for his help with private stuff I will not divulge here. He turns to me and goes, "Sorry, I'll be back in a bit. Sweetheart." I just nodded, I was just like, alright, see you in a bit. No questions, no screaming, just acceptance. He gets up to put on his sneakers and leans down to kiss me again, which I just accept at this point. It's a nice kiss besides the fact that my mind is somewhere else. He leaves and I get a text from his coach, boyfriend's name, to come tomorrow at 19, he'll only listen if it's UTF. You mean only me? You're the responsible adult tasked with training these hockey players, why do you depend on me bringing him to you? But that led me to a rabbit hole of finding out who knows we're dating. Apparently, majority of the people I talk to think we're dating, or if I'm being correct here, know we're dating, and just, have never mentioned it to me. I don't think it's a prank solely on the fact that his mom called me his girlfriend, they don't have the closest relationship. She is a very traditional, conservative and religious Korean woman, always serious and does not play around. When she realized early on that her son did not agree with many of her opinions, she stopped caring for him to the fullest, only keeping it civil for the rest of the family and friends. There's nothing he could have done to have her go along with something like this, especially when she wants him to marry young with a nice Korean girl, which I'm not. Also, he just does not seem like the guy to play with people like this. He might be dumb and oblivious, but not horrible. I don't know what to do now. I mean, he's a great guy, don't get me wrong. And if the last 5 years are anything to go by, he would be a great boyfriend, maybe even in the future a husband. But, I've never looked at him that way, so I can't say I love him. When this occurred, it was like the glass shattered and I saw how differently he looked at me, how he talked and acted, stuff that never changed since the beginning but for some reason I've never noticed. I can't sit here and pretend I love him like that, I wasn't thinking about him in that sense all this time. But, on the other side, I don't want to hurt him, he clearly thinks we've been together for that long so he has to have strong feelings for me, and I don't want to step on them and scar him like that. I can't just keep dating him though, something that I've apparently been doing for a year. I could learn to love him eventually, it wouldn't take much to be honest, but it wouldn't be fair to him or me, in my defense, who dates someone and just does not ask them about it. If the roles were reversed and a year ago something happened where I was like shit, I love him, this was probably a date, we're probably dating right now, I would have confirmed with him or at the very least said something for the following year, not only at the 1 year mark. I just don't know what to do, I'm scared and angry, disappointed in myself for not recognizing the situation sooner, feel like I'm stuck between the sword and the wall, last thing I want is to hurt him, but I also don't want to lie to him, how should I go on about this with him?
Am I the a-hole for refusing to hide my period products from my boyfriend? I thought I was dating a grown man, but I guess not. My boyfriend has completely pissed me off this week, and I don't regret leaving him over it. I met my boyfriend at my college's library a few months ago. I was struggling with using the library system to find a specific book, and he introduced himself and helped me find the book. He is still in school for his bachelor's while I am in the middle of completing my master's degree. He's also a couple of years younger than me. We started hanging out a lot on campus. I had a busy schedule, so it was just easier to see him when we were already in the same place. We studied together and went on a lot of coffee dates until I felt comfortable to invite him over. He dorms at University, and I had my own apartment. Therefore, when we started hanging out off campus, we would get together at my apartment. We literally just started dating, and I never anticipated running into an issue like this so early on in our relationship. Anyway, my boyfriend had hung out at my place before, but never slept over. This week we were watching movies till late at my palace, and then the last movie ended, and we saw the time. I asked if he wanted to sleep over. He happily agreed, and we had a nice night. It actually turned out to be the first time we were intimate together. The very next morning, my boyfriend and I woke up, and he asked to take a shower. When he came back out, his mood seemed to have changed. It was strange, and I asked him if everything was okay. All he said was that he was feeling off and we would talk later before rushing out of my apartment. It was bizarre, but I had other things to do that day, so I just put him out of my mind till later when he called me. I could have never expected the bullshit reason he was upset at me for. I came right out and asked my boyfriend what had been bothering him that morning, and he admitted that he saw something in my bathroom that had disturbed him. He stumbled over his words and kept saying as he explained to me what happened. He said he had seen tampons in my bathroom, and that he felt like I was only enough to hide unsanitary things like that from my guests. I asked him if he was joking, and he said I was old enough to know that it was basic manners to put that stuff away and that I was making my guests uncomfortable by leaving it out in the open like that. I couldn't believe my ears. When I realized he was being completely serious, I laughed at him and hung up the phone while he was still speaking. I blocked him right after ending the call. Obviously he's an idiot manchild, and I have no time or tolerance for anyone that dumb in my life.
My friend tried to set me up with his coworker's daughter, but I got with her mom instead. My friend, 30 male, recently informed me, 28 male, that one of his coworkers, an older woman, asked him if he knew anyone who would be interested in what she called her chronically single daughter, 25. The woman apparently regarded my friend as a decent young man and figured he would most likely be friends with other decent young men. The reason the woman didn't ask my friend if he might be interested in her daughter was because my friend was in a relationship. My friend informed the woman that he might know a guy. Cue the part where I came in. My friend called me and asked if I would be keen to get to know his coworker's daughter. My first response was to request photos to get an idea of what the daughter looked like. My friend didn't have photos of the daughter, but he did have a name and surname for me to search online. I liked what I saw when I scanned through the daughter's social media. She was really attractive and seemed like fun. I made my friend aware that I was interested. My friend asked for my permission to share a few photos of me with his coworker, also known as the mom, so she could share it with her daughter. I said sure. A few days later, my friend contacted me to share the feedback he received from his coworker. Based on my friend's feedback, the daughter was still in the dark about my existence because the mom suddenly decided that she first wanted to meet me in order to gauge if I would be good enough for her daughter. And just like that, I lost interest. I was in no mood to meet the mom to get vetted and thus stopped caring about the whole matchmaker thing. There were easier ways to meet girls without a middleman or a middle mom. I was on the verge of tapping out, but my friend, who was still fully invested for some reason, managed to change my mind and convince me to go through with it after reminding me of how long it's been since my last relationship. My meeting with the mom happened a couple of days ago. I could see where the daughter got her looks from. From the moment the mom opened her mouth and bombarded me with loaded questions about my life, I sensed something between us. I thought it was my imagination until my meeting with the mom continued in my bedroom. For the record, the mom established she was single prior to my penis entering the picture. I had no post-nut clarity regret when we were done effing, but the same could not be said about the mom. She cut our cuddling sessions short and proceeded to get dressed as fast as possible. I asked her why she was leaving so soon after we had what I thought was good intimacy. She said her daughter was off limits from that moment onwards and asked if I understood what off limits meant. I said yes and asked the mom if she was off limits too or just her daughter. She looked at me like I was a kid asking his parent for a puppy before telling me that we were not compatible and therefore better off going our separate ways. I asked the mom if not compatible was a reference to the age gap between us. She laughed like she expected me to bring up the age difference. When I asked her to fill me in on what was so funny, she said she could literally list all the things that made us incompatible based on the answers I gave her when she was getting to know me and the experience she had getting to F me. Not gonna lie, she was beginning to get under my skin at that point, so I challenged her to share at least 5 things that supposedly made us incompatible. She accepted the challenge and shared more than 5 things. This is what I remember from her list: I habitually bite my fingernails. I avoid the gym. I still look forward to Christmas presents from my parents. I'm oddly obsessed with koalas. I hate sushi. I never learned how to swim. I smoke weed. I'm friends with my ex. I travel to work using a skateboard. I struggle to parallel park when I'm not using my skateboard. I'm too quiet during intimacy. I seem to think playing Rammstein during intimacy is the same as not being quiet. I was unable to make her bust more than 5 times in under an hour. I asked the mom what made her sleep with me if she had so many reasons not to. She said I kind of reminded her of the first boy she hooked up with in high school. I said and? She said it was old feelings she had to get out of her system. I asked her if I was nothing more than a nostalgia F. She advised me not to put a label on what happened and to forget about her and her daughter forever. This post is proof that I'm struggling to forget. Not only did this woman leave me feeling used and a little insecure, she's also avoiding my friend at work and now he's low-key blaming me for contributing to an uncomfortable working environment. F my life.
What is something bad you have done with no regrets? Part 2. Back in high school, my friend was always picked on by the coach because he was very unathletic. One day, the coach made me and my friend clean up the storage room as a punishment for slacking off in class. Coach gave me his lanyard with his keys and whistle to open and lock up the storage room. When we were done, my friend asked me for the lanyard and he took the coach's whistle and stuck the mouthpiece up his butt under his shorts. We went and found the coach and gave him back his lanyard, as another class was beginning. I did not say a thing about what my friend did with the whistle. First thing the coach did when he got the lanyard back was start blowing that whistle.
Ex-boyfriend violates me and denies it. I ruin his life. Part 4. I walked back to my car after the meeting and texted a professional resignation message in the group's communication channel, citing personal reasons and wishing the best for the group. This would be the first of the communications that Josh would receive related to the meeting that had just happened. I directed any treasury concerns to pray while they worked to appoint a replacement. These communications were kept professional, as I intended to come out of the situation with grace. Any malice could have disrupted my efforts to be credible. I then drove over to the faculty advisor's office with the intent of catching him up on the meeting that happened. I instead pulled into the parking lot to see Josh's car parked outside. I thought to myself, oh great, he's probably inside, this might be fun. Coincidentally, Bestie was also stopping by the building, and I ran into her in the parking lot. I hadn't seen her in a while, so we hugged and I told her that I had just stepped down from my position, and that I was doing pretty rough. My mind was still quite fogged from the meeting I had just left. I told Bestie that I wanted to talk, but right then wasn't a good time, and invited her to talk later. She was entirely unaware of the happenings between Josh and I. She knew we broke up but not why. As I turned to move inside, I saw Josh sitting inside his car, and I realized exactly what just happened. From his perspective, he thought he had dodged the Title IX bullet, just saw me hug Bestie, our mutual friend, and had likely been reading the resignation message I had sent. Furthermore, I was going into the building where the design group runs out of, which was, not proudly, a relatively rare sight. To top it all off, his phone was also likely blowing up from the elected board calling, messaging him to figure out what was going on. The faculty advisor wasn't in his office when I dropped by, so I messaged him an update of what happened, and sat inside for a minute to collect myself after everything that just happened. I then walked past his car to get back to mine, ignoring his presence, and I left. I couldn't imagine what Josh was feeling at that moment, though it was likely some combination of terror and shock. It selfishly made me feel good. The following day, the rest of the elected board reached out to me mostly individually to express their sympathy and check in with me. I had kept what happened to about 8 pertinent individuals in order to not paint the entire group in a bad light. I still wasn't sure if the group was going to follow through with the request that I made to remove him, or if they even believed me. Turns out they did. That evening, I received a notification from the elected board's group chat, as well as the group's general chat, with a message that tagged everyone from Josh stating that he was resigning immediately upon facing immediate removal. He name-dropped me in this message and stated that I had made false allegations that were investigated by the school and dropped. They were not dropped. Title IX doesn't simply get dropped. He also claimed that he sought legal representation for the claims. None of what I did was illegal, so I call BS here, and stated that he was disappointed by his friends. He spun it as them choosing false claims over their friendship. He then somehow sent this message as an email to every person who had ever been a part of the group at my school. 700 plus people get this email with my name on it at 9:30 p.m. at night, and my direct messages start going crazy. Why did I get this? What is happening? Are you okay? I don't know what's going on here, but he seems like he's hiding something. What was alleged? These were just some of the messages I got. I responded to most of them by simply stating that no one should have ever gotten that email, but to not worry about me. But I was livid. The faculty advisor messaged me. He was livid. The entire elected board was livid and in shock that he sent that message. I messaged the faculty advisor to meet the following morning so he could catch me up on the internal fallout I had missed. Turns out, the elected board immediately reached out to Josh and said that he needed to resign or face immediate removal. Josh threw a tantrum and sent out the message, which he felt vindicated himself from any wrongdoing. The message made the board even more convinced that they made the right decision, because they thought Josh was hiding something with the defensive tone he held in the email. In this meeting, the faculty advisor confided in me that Josh was also banned from the lab space because of that email, which was extremely unprofessional and painted the entire group in a bad light. He name-dropped the group in the email as well. Because of the severity of the email and the now on record events that had occurred between Josh and I, the dean of my school was also informed. The faculty advisor reassured me that I had handled the situation properly and commended me for taking the high road. I had not once spoken poorly about Josh to the elected board, nor did I drag the group through the mud, though I very much had the opportunity to do so. I made him aware of the conflict between Prey and I in this meeting. I also spoke to Bestie that day, who also received that email, and told her everything that happened. She had remained friends with Josh after our breakup, and she told me that he said I had ghosted him. She had not previously asked for my side. Remember those sappy text messages he sent before he asked if he should move on? Yeah, my not responding to all of those, I had responded to some, and I had called him in between them as well, was what he framed as ghosting. So I cleared that air with her too. She was absolutely floored that he could do such a thing, but we reconciled over many questionable behaviors he had displayed throughout my relationship and, independently, her friendship with him. With these events, I would say that I received my closure, or, at least, as close to closure as one can get in this type of situation. I don't think that Josh believes he's done anything wrong in this situation, but honestly, I'm okay with that. I simply stated what happened, and it caused a daisy chain of reactions that culminated in Josh losing almost every single one of his friends, as the heavy majority are in the group and were made aware of what happened, his passion, the design group, and the space that he used to spend most of his free hours in, the group's lab. He also lost faculty advisor's respect, who is a very prominent figure in our school, as well as Jackass X's now former boss. The school is keeping an eye on him now, while also potentially considering disciplinary action on him. When I say that the group was important to Josh, I mean it. When he wasn't in class, he was usually working in the group or spending time with the friends in it. I don't know what he is doing now, and honestly, I don't care. I don't see him around anymore. Remember Nathan? Allegedly, Josh was still together with him at the time I gave the PowerPoint. To keep my stance of being professional through my actions, I am not going to dig around to find out if that was the case. I don't know who the boyfriend is, and Josh does not have a social media presence. I could ask Bestie, but I believe that Nathan received word of the incidents I brought forward. I suspect that Josh may be single as a result. Regarding the high school ex, I do not know who he is either, or if he even existed. This could have been a really screwed up lie that Josh made. I made my decision to report Josh in the first place by going off the assumption that what Josh told me was the truth, that there were previous allegations made. I gave him the opportunity to take accountability for his actions, but he instead chose his pride and ruined his life in the process. As I initially stated in the beginning, Josh deserves so much worse for what he did to me, and most of the karma he received was due to his own pride-sparing actions. I would have sent him to jail if I could have, but the evidence I held would not be strong enough to put him there. He may not presently believe that he has done anything wrong, but those closest to him know that he did, and to me, the social repercussions he faced seem like, almost, suitable punishment. Nurses, what was the haunting child case you've seen? I've been a registered nurse for 12 years now, and seen a lot of crap. I was particularly lucky in nursing school and got to watch open heart surgery, joint replacement, kidney removal, and all kinds of neat stuff right over the surgeon's shoulder. The only one that ever gave me a problem was this kid about 10 years old getting his tonsils removed. The doc had this hooked knife, he reached into the kid's mouth, hooked the tonsil, and yanked it back to cut it out. Blood flew out of the unconscious kid's mouth. So I'm standing there, I look up and all of a sudden everything's getting sparkly. I just said I need to leave. Right now. The surgeon takes his tools out of the kid's mouth and says okay. Someone, please walk him out, thanks. So I learned that for some reason, I get queasy when it's kids being hurt. Which is funny, because I was a pediatrics nurse for quite a while after school. Anyway, the actual story. I wasn't even at work, but maybe 4 years ago, I was living with my girlfriend at the time and her 3 young boys. That day, the youngest, about 7, had been climbing up a big lilac bush in the yard that I'd trimmed the day before. He slipped and fell out. A sharp, cut branch caught him in the face on his way down. I was in the kitchen and heard this blood-curdling scream and ran outside. I brought him in, sat him on the kitchen table, and took a look. It seemed like he was pretty lucky, there was just a deep cut on the bottom of his nose. Well, he was bleeding pretty decently, so his mother and I took him to the emergency room. When we got there, there's only a physician's assistant on duty. He takes a look and thinks maybe it could use a couple of stitches. Or, he says, he could call the on-call ENT surgeon for another opinion. We told him that, with all due respect, we would like to have a surgeon take a look, just in case. Good thing we did. The boy had nearly taken his entire nose off his face. The stick cut up under the nose and traveled along under the flesh up to the bridge. The entire nose was hanging by a half-inch of skin at the top. We just hadn't moved it much. As soon as the surgeon came in and pulled this little boy's nose off his face, while he was laying on the exam table screaming absolute bloody death, suddenly I got hot, things started getting hazy, and I realized I'm about to pass out. So I quickly exited the room and sat down, at the same time as my girlfriend, who was also a nurse. Neither of us could take it.
My brother is so effing disgusting. My family bought a vacuum when we first moved into our current house 8 years ago. It was a brand new, perfectly working Dyson. A couple years ago we got a new vacuum and just kept the Dyson in our closet. This is where the vileness starts. My older brother has no life outside of the house, no girlfriend, no nothing other than his work. He always smells bad too and refuses to brush his teeth as his ancestors never did. The worst part is, my dad and I have walked into him in a closed room, only to behold the sight of the vacuum placed directly on his PP, and turned on. My brother would be making these weird faces, and once I walked in on him, he didn't even stop what he was doing. Instead, he made eye contact with me. It's disgusting. He has been doing this ever since. You can hear the vacuum making a sound as if it's stuck on something, and nowadays he doesn't even stop after we walk in on him. And it's not like he would do it once in a while. No, he'd do it at least 4 to 5 times a week. Who the hell knows how often really, especially with my parents and I being out of the house way more frequently than him. Fast forward to this week, a couple years after the first time he did that. Our newer vacuum's right prong fell out somewhere, and therefore cannot be plugged into vacuum, so we started using the old one. The smell emanating from that thing was so musty and raunchy. I tried using the stick part to vacuum the corners of a bed, but when I extended it, it was caked up with this foul-smelling brownish yellowish blackish substance. And I'm pretty sure you can connect the dots as to what that is. It's not the only disgusting stuff he's done in this house. Besides not brushing his teeth, he has tried to serve us raw chicken. I can't take how he is anymore.
Am I the jerk for not letting my sister walk down the aisle at my wedding? I, 29, am getting married to the love of my life, 30, in a few months. We were high school lovers, and childhood friends. He's truly my best friend and everything I want in life. However, we both decided to wait until we were well off to be married, so we could have our once-in-a-lifetime magical moment. My sister, Stacy, 21, got married at 19 to someone who I like, but I'm not super close with. They were together for 5 months before he proposed. Their wedding was rushed, and half our family couldn't even make it because of how soon it was planned and set up. It was small, and just in a courtroom. No dress, party, etc. Just a legal wedding. However, my wedding is around $19K, and we haven't even finished everything. It took us ages to set everything up and save. Stacy recently came up to me while coming over. We're close, and have dinner once a week at my place, and asked if she could walk down my aisle and meet her husband, so she could feel like a bride. I laughed and asked if she was serious, and she was. She claims she never got her magic moment, and just wants to feel special once. But it's my wedding and my special day. She had hers. Stacy claims it will only be between us, and it won't take away from me, but then I asked what she might wear and she showed me pictures on her phone of wedding dresses. Hard no for me. She then asked again yesterday in front of my fiancé, and I think it was an attempt to pressure me. He laughed and said no, thinking it was a joke, like I did the first time. My mother and Stacy's husband say I'm being an asshole because Stacy still isn't rich, so she can't afford another wedding even if she wanted one, but neither are me and my future husband. We just planned for years. I just wanted one day for myself, but maybe I'm blowing it up because she never got the bridal experience. My coworker adopted a child and is trying to give them away. I talked with the cops about the situation and honestly, they were just as confused as I was. The person I talked to on the phone was just as stumped, but he agreed that at a minimum they did need to do a welfare check. I've had experiences with welfare checks before and I had the nagging feeling that something just wouldn't go right. And someone PM'd me the priority line for my state's Child Protective Services hotline. I got someone on the phone right away, and as soon as I mentioned that trafficking could be going on and that she was advertising the kid on Facebook, it was a public post here too, people, they acted with a quickness. I gave them all the information I had on Mary and Tony and all the information I had from Mary about Tony's adoption. The person I spoke to right away said that she suspected that the adoption might not even be legal. I was floored. I emailed all the screenshots I had to the person I spoke with and asked for a follow-up if that was at all possible. I said that myself and my boyfriend were willing to take Tony on a temporary basis if necessary, but the CPS representative said that likely wasn't possible. Then, the waiting game began. Last night was probably the most stressful night I've ever had. Hell, at one point, I was ready to drive out to Mary's house myself but was stopped by my boyfriend. It was tough. The cops followed up with us at approximately 2 a.m. Note that I haven't heard from CPS. The officer I spoke with was very cautious and limited in what he said, but he told me that CPS arrived at the home shortly after he did. In not so many words, he implied that Mary had been talking to someone about meeting Tony the very next day and that CPS suspicions were confirmed. Tony's adoption was not legal. Tony was rehomed to Mary and her husband from another state where placement needs to be approved by a judge. He didn't elaborate further except to say that other issues came to light and all of the children were removed from the home for their own safety by CPS. He didn't say how long they were there, but said it was a long time. I was asked to drop off all emails and printouts to the station in the morning, and I agreed. My boyfriend and I wanted to make doubly sure that all of our bases were checked, so I called our local FBI office who said they lacked jurisdiction in the matter but would be writing up a complaint and referring the issue to the State Department. We called the Ukrainian embassy and made a detailed complaint and I included the contact information I had for the officer from the department. The crap really hit the fan when I went into work to print out the email. Our company is pretty small and the company owner, I'll call her Big Angie because of her resemblance to the Mob Wives lady, had gotten wind of Mary's email. Big Angie was furious, and waiting at Mary's desk to see if she would show up for work. My friend reported that Big Angie waited from 7:15 to 9:30 a.m., and that Mary came to work with a sob story about how her kids were being unfairly taken away. Mary wanted time off from work to clear her name and devote herself to reclaiming her family from this misunderstanding. I wasn't there to witness this, but Big Angie, who has 6 kids herself, apparently ripped Mary a new butthole. Mary has been dismissed and rumor has it that Big Angie may or may not allow her to claim unemployment. My head is honestly still spinning from everything that has happened. The past 24 hours have been insanity. I'm so grateful that the system worked as quickly as it did. I only hope it works out a long-term solution to this problem and that Mary doesn't get to reclaim her kids. My heart is breaking for Tony and the other kids right now. I don't know what the heck was happening in Mary's house that made CPS remove them that night, but I'm going to sleep better knowing that they aren't with Psycho Mary and her husband, at least for a while. What the future holds for Tony and the other kids, especially because Tony's adoption was apparently illegal, makes me sick, but I'm going to wish for the best. I need a damn drink.
What screams I'm poor but pretend I'm rich? Posting selfies posed with things that aren't yours. Following constantly posting stupid entrepreneur shit on Instagram. My brother always carries a wad of cash in a money clip. He has a $100 bill on the outside, but the rest is all $1s. It's all for show. He has no money and lives with my parents. An expensive, current year model car, parked in front of a low-income apartment complex. I have a relatively poor friend who doesn't have a TV or anything, but they go around in a several hundred-pound tracksuit and wear fake diamond rings they bought on Wish, which he tells people are real. Taking pictures in a fake luxury airplane. Me, telling people I own Bitcoin, but conveniently not mentioning that I only own 002 BTC. Bragging about how much money you have, clothes and accessories with huge logos on them, posting pictures of new items you purchased on Instagram and stuff. My old roommate spent his entire financial aid refund on a Gucci belt because the security guard at the mall assumed he couldn't afford it.
What did a nurse do or say that made you immediately request another nurse? My ex-partner John underwent back surgery and was in a world of hurt post-operation. Morphine couldn't even put a dent in his pain, so his doctor prescribed the most potent narcotic available, Dilaudid. Due to the powerful nature of the drug, John's doses had to be precisely timed and he was not allowed to deviate from the schedule. As the effects of the Dilaudid would wear off about 50 minutes before his next dose was due, John would have to endure searing pain until his next scheduled dose. I, being the doting partner, would start reminding John's nurse to order the next dose from the pharmacy well in advance, giving her 5-minute warning. Watching my husband writhe in pain was nothing short of heart-wrenching, but on more than one occasion, when it was finally time for John's next dose, the nurse would nonchalantly announce, "Oh right, let me call the pharmacy." This would result in John having to wait an additional 30 minutes for relief from his pain. The last straw came when it was time for John's next dose and the nurse had the medication ready, but instead of administering it, she said, "Let me just finish up this paperwork and I'll be there in a few minutes." I snapped. I couldn't take it anymore. I told her, "That is just a piece of paper. That is a human being in agony. Is there really any question about what your priority should be here?" I reported the incident to the head nurse, who promptly reassigned the nurse and made her apologize to both John and myself. I wasn't going to let my husband suffer anymore, not while there was still something I could do about it. My girlfriend's 4-year-old daughter accused me of touching her. I've been with my girlfriend for over a year now and she has 2 kids, a 4-year-old daughter and a 5-year-old son. The younger we believe has autism as she is harmfully violent to her brother, hurts animals, she's sensitive to noise, and she has explosive emotions. She also has dark thoughts on a regular basis. This past year she accused her grandpa of assaulting her and making her bleed from her face. We took her word on it even though we never saw any physical evidence proving it. She has even lied about me touching her inappropriately. Today I got a text from her mom saying that there's a scratch on her daughter's arm. Her mom asked her about it, and she came up with a story about how I scratched her for misbehaving. Then her story changed to he cut me with a sharp knife. Completely false, and I'm shocked her family believes her. My girlfriend said her family is pressuring her into getting child protective services and the police involved. Apparently they're getting her checked for SA as well. The family wants me to take a lie detector test to prove my innocence. Would agreeing to a lie detector test be wise? If they were 100% accurate, I'd take one, but I'm worried it'd show faulty results and I'd spend time in prison for complete bullshit.
My sister's husband is unhinged and I don't know what to do about it. I guess I'll just start from the very beginning. The year is 1998 and my sister, M, and I went to a church conference during winter break. It was super popular, full of 90s kids with braces, and teenage love was in the air. M met her soulmate at camp, let's call him Jay. They fell madly in love at the age of 14 and dated on and off for the next few years, before they officially went their separate ways. A few years later my sister got married in her early 20s very quickly. She had 2 kids, and seemed to love her life. The only problem was that her and her husband, Kay, live multiple states away from our family. She convinced Kay to move to our home state, taking him away from all of his friends and family. Things were going great until she got bored. Kay was surprisingly thriving at work and in their social life, where M wasn't, which made her resentful. At this time I was living a few hours away, still in the same state, and she decided to start visiting me. A lot. I was in my early 20s party stage and she was in her bored housewife cheating stage. She would stay with me but find any and everyone she could to cheat on Kay. I am 100% guilty in this, but I enjoyed spending time with my sister and she ignored everything I said to her. This came to a head when Kay was getting increasingly worried. I told M that she could no longer visit me until she came clean to Kay. Well, she never did and I had to break the news to Kay. It was so difficult and heartbreaking. Kay and I always had a good relationship and I put my nieces before anything else, so in the end it was worth it to come clean. Now, After the confession and trying to work on their marriage, my sister told me that she was actually in contact with Jay, the random guy from camp when she was 14. She divorced Kay and immediately started a relationship with Jay. The love of her life. The thing to know about Jay is that he is from a privileged upbringing, which means he's never had to hold a steady job. All of his money comes from his parents. Things began to get serious and my sister asked Jay to move in with her. As in buying a house together, her rule was that Jay has to have a job. They surprisingly were approved for the loan and Jay got a fantastic job through an old friend. Things were going great. We finally got together on vacation with both families and were very charmed by Jay. He was throwing cash around as if money was no object. This goes on for about a year and a half. That's when I got the call from my sister. In their agreement to buy the house, he would be in charge of paying the mortgage, her, everything else. 1 month the mortgage was past due and he just couldn't pay. After some pushing, my sister found out that the job never existed. He maxed all of his credit cards out pretending he was getting paid. During the confession he brandished a gun that my sister never knew about. The kids hid in the closet and called 911. Jay was admitted to a 24 hours observation in the ER. My sister Em began investigating even further. Turns out that Jay not only didn't have a job, but learned to use software programs to fake pay stubs and business cards. He would pretend to go to work for 7 hours a day, driving around and hanging out in stores. He would take work calls constantly by dialing a callback number and labeling it as work in his phone, having full conversations with no one. This was going on for over a year, paying mortgage with credit cards, promising he'd take care of her and the kids, running up his credit and failing to pay a mortgage while ruining her credit. 4 months later, she took him back after he got a steady job. They bought another, more expensive house, got married, and had a baby. I honestly don't know if his job is real or where money is coming from other than her department store job. She refuses to speak about the past, but then she'll complain that he barely touches the baby. She can't trust him to get up at night to take care of the baby, so she does it all. When friends and family visit, he tells the same story over and over again, proving how much he loves baby. They argue endlessly and wholeheartedly resent each other. They get wasted and argue, no matter who is in the house, including the kids. I've tried to talk to her and she won't hear it. She constantly tried to encourage me into talking trash about my own husband, and then gets mad when I describe a healthy, functional relationship. With his past use of using a gun to threaten himself and his inability to be trusted, I am very worried about my sister and her kids' life. I feel like their whole shtick comes from a really bizarre Lifetime movie. I worry every day that I'll get a call about Jay doing something bad, or even worse, doing something bad to my sister and the kids. So that's the gist of it. I'm terrified and waiting on the news that he finally did it.